Blue TVs or TVs. I was thinking my mother-in-law told the same story. She did that her house in Canto probably like 10, 20 years ago. Took it just was really bad light. Yeah. And all of a sudden every room that had a TV you hear it's like one at a time. Every break room. Yeah. And
Okay, I saw that. I was
coax running through from the antenna down into the house. There was a spot where a rabbit next to the dentist. And he jumped over his
I have some slides.
In 2022, he said that Bay Area came out and told him that the air conditioner was 2011.
Jealous that you have what we have.
I'm so glad I was home because like I saw the white
No
light
idea.
when I hit the house
Unless Jane
and
H.
like I was home by myself. I'm running around like,
Almost the size.
oh God,
How about
okay.
have
Like maybe just get outside, we're okay. Again, I smelled the cable motor, I ran in the garage.
And clearly, I can tell the difference between looking at an air conditioner.
It wasn't until like a day or two later.
Are there any out for sale? For sale?
Couple of little things.
One that we got was 115 acres.
Do I call the warranty company or call Peak Services and pay them $100? Sure, yeah. So I'm inclined to do that.
Plan it.
And that helps out the low end.
Plan it, develop it, and then sell it. And then sell it. So, more money that way.
Yeah, right. But they seem to have
Better, better.
What do you guys like, do you wanna fill them with a property manager and have them managed?
Or do you want to have a management company we use for the same stuff in Hillsborough?
all of a
Okay,
sudden
we have three.
go to town
We did
and
property
see
management too.
the whole.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Stuff like that too, my partner.
Even when
That's
he's
good
got
that you got it right.
it
We
literally
wanted
was
something
still
like
like,
that, but I told my daughter, no,
I was like,
yeah, it's property management.
I have a battery back on for a couple of my computer lines.
Okay.
You can hear the relay in us.
Yeah,
It just rapid
60.
fire.
Right now, we have like 20.
I was like, all right, don't touch it. Let it calm down. Don't touch it. We're still searching.
And then people, you know,
The guys out there for like 20 minutes, and then finally, like, because we're holding a multimeter to a thing, and we can see it just.
Yeah, you have it in your
And
contract,
then finally,
too.
it calmed down.
If they sell, they have to use
And then we're like, all right, I think we're good, so we got
so
the breaker change.
property management agreement says that yes, once the tenant's placed,
Yeah,
as long as that tenant's in there,
you don't know what's
Right.
laying.
It depends on the
Lynn's laying
situation,
across the
you know what I mean, obviously.
power line somewhere, you know, it's
If
crazy.
it was, if we knew that it was
And that's what I
intended
think
to
it
be
is.
change of
And
hands
this-
and sale,
I told my wife,
then we could figure out some sort of, like a buyout or something like that.
and it hit the console.
Something that wouldn't
To me, it was,
tie your
My damage came
hands.
down
it
to
didn't
coax
bother me,
and
but
networks, and TVs, et cetera. But like,
last one we did in Gibson.
all my appliances, my TVs, my like refrigerator, all that,
His shop.
knock on
No,
wood,
he just wanted
it's
to
okay.
shop it.
Yeah,
But
right.
like
I get
anything
it.
connected to the network.
Yeah, we've had that happen in the past. and,
I mean, you guys
my
have
partner-
TVs
Loyalty for the other guy, right?
Yeah.
Remember that these were.
Well, and truthfully, if you want to have the smoothest changeover, it's easier because there's a lot already going on with the changeover ownership. You should probably keep management the same for a while and then just phase it. Like when this tenant moves out, the new management company does that one, and then as they move, kind of instead of just doing all of it blanket at the same time, because then you disrupt the tenants. Tenants don't like all that. And, you know, it's,
I had some friends.
And
back
it
in
was,
the-
it was a lot, he made it. It was just a little bit of fire.
Yeah.
What is it, your group, your group of guys again?
25 minutes, that was huge fire.
Way back in the day.
Seems like the younger guys, when they get that money in their pocket, they don't wanna work anymore. I don't understand that. When I was young, the more I put in my pocket, the better off I am.
Yeah, right, especially now in life, like, you money in your pocket right now on this spot, cause that money ain't really worth shit.
No, that's not, that's all I spend on it. I'm good.
Yeah, right, it ain't doing nothing in the bank.
About ready to close her down. All right, y'all ready?
What's your chairman of county council? Yeah, you're not here?
No.
I saw somebody else's name.
Yeah.
On something.
Yeah, no, I left probably.
They're in control, they'll sit when you sit.
All right.
Yeah. I love
Talking about Avon or something. Good morning. This is the Citrus Planning and Development Commission hearing for August the 1st, 2024. If you'd like to join us at this time, I'd invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
Thank you. Now, at this time, I'm sorry, for the courtesy of the applicants, if you can, and the board and those around you at this time, if you can place all your cellular devices on mute. And may we get the roll call, please?
The following Planning and Development Commission members are present. Chair Richard Barmez, James Royce, first vice chair, David Bramblett, second vice chair, Michael Facemeyer, Robert Shara, alternate Timothy Gilbert, Stacy Worthington, and School Board Representative Chuck Dixon.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal any decisions made by the commission with respect to any matter considered in this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record indicates the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is based. During the public input portion of this meeting, individuals are given 3 minutes and representatives of an organization are given 5 minutes. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete the yellow form and hand it to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application for which you are speaking on the form. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the front door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker, and comments will be limited only to the topics being heard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the tape record. And so at this time, we're going to open the podium up to the public, and this is an opportunity for you to come forward to address the commission on any issues you may wish. And just to note, this is not for discussion of the application. It's going to be heard today. So anyone? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting down. We do have minutes to approve for July the 6th, 2023. So looking for an approval, or I mean, a
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of July 6th, 2023 as submitted.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Any staff announcements, Joe?
No, sir.
Thank you. Just for the record, PUD 1911 has been continued by the applicant. It will not be heard today, so if you're here for that application, we will not be speaking on that today. And may we get the ex parte communications from our county attorney, please?
Yes, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, so have you had any ex parte communications for the applications that will be presented to you today?
None.
Site visits.
None.
None.
Site visits?
None.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I just don't have
I had
the
a
numbers.
conversation with the applicant on the site.
Can you talk into the mic, please?
Yes, I had a conversation with the applicant, or the second applicant on the site.
All right, thank you. All right, now it's time for AA-2024-00002. If the applicant is present, can work his way to the podium, and may we get the staff introduction, please?
Yes, sir, good morning. This application is local engineering for Timothy Sheehan. This is looking north from the subject property. This is looking south from the subject property. This is looking east from the subject property. Looking west along North Florida Avenue. And this is the site plan submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Mike Wilburn, Local Engineering, Inc., address P.O. Box 938, Floral City, Florida 34436. I would like to present in 5 different areas this morning, kind of walking through the staff report that you guys have before you. I would also like to note something that the staff report doesn't mention, but some of you may remember. This application is a follow-up to previous applications that you have seen, one being a street vacate. So this project has been moving in the county with emails and back and forth with client since 2021, early 2021. And so it has a history that I hope will come out and maybe enhance the staff report as well as my presentation. The property is an expansion of an existing facility. It's on an adjacent property. The existing storage facility that is to the north of this site plan was developed first in 1997, and it has been expanded several times under various owners since that time. The current facility, the current owner has expanded once, and then this project has a desire to continue to expand that same facility. So the first area I want to talk about is access. The staff report does a great job of discussing that, and that is a discussion that goes back to 2021. And so I want to try to give you guys a brief history of that. To the north of the subject property, between the property that you see right now and the existing facility, is a 30-foot wide alleyway. And you can see that's where we're proposing our roadway. The staff report describes this as well. To the east of the subject property, there's also a 30-foot alley, which you guys can see on the site plan. As the staff report discusses and the engineering review discusses, both of these alleyways are 30 foot in width and not wide enough for current 2-lane road standards, which the minimum is 50 feet. Historically, when we first submitted this project, we desired to take access off of Highway 41. And we were told by the engineering division at that time, which for background, we're three engineering directors removed from that time. So there's been some turnover, there's been some different discussions and some conflicting discussions. And so we originally wanted to take access off of Highway 41. As a side note, would still love to, but we were told we had to take it off of the side street, only later to be told that the side street was not in fact a street, but was an alleyway. It doesn't meet the current standards of the 50-foot wide because it doesn't allow for any type of side drainage, any type of curb and swale or anything like that that the current standards in the LDC would require. The engineer who, that doesn't matter. Okay, so we did not have an issue making this a 1-lane road. However, as this site plan proposes, we show a 2-lane road and we show the county not absorbing any of that stormwater. The stormwater is all accounted for in the stormwater ponds as shown. And so we do believe from an engineering perspective there's an alternative solution that could be reached with perhaps a new set of eyes looking at this and from a stormwater and engineering perspective. There's no causation for any type of public safety that's mentioned in the staff report. There wouldn't be. It just strictly doesn't meet the current 50-foot wide standard. And again, as the staff report mentions, it perhaps doesn't because it was created in 1969. I want to talk about compatibility. In terms of compatibility, We have already discussed the existence of a mini storage facility to the north. Same ownership, just an expansion. All of the adjacent property on the other side, so that would be the west side of 44, the left side of your screen there, is GNC, which the staff presentation will probably show. The staff report mentions that this type of mixed use does not exist on the same site anywhere, and that's true. However, as you guys noted in the initial PowerPoint, this is actually 3 separate parcels, and so technically, this is not one complete site, it's one project, but not one complete site, and we have in fact seen other projects like this where parcels are together under one ownership, but separate parcels for different uses, one being the new development surrounding Target. The master plan for Citrus Springs mentioned in the staff report also allows for both of the uses that we are requesting. One is simply the expansion of something that is existing, the storage facility, and the other one is a development of medium-density residential duplex units. The third category I want to talk about is utilities. Within the alleyway right now to the east is a force main water line. It's been utilized and it's been upgraded by the current owner to provide additional fire hydrants and fire flow on previous projects, and so that line has been upgraded at the owner's expense and also would be upgraded at the owner's expense now to service the duplex as well as fire flow for the 2 storage facilities shown. So we have water. We don't have central sewer available, county sewer. However, as the staff report mentions, we hired a consultant and did some analysis to see if this site could be serviced by central sewer by another state definition, which is a monitored system of 2 or more put together. And so you'll see those 3 septic systems there are aerobic and they are designed to be monitored. They meet the criteria for central sewer when public central sewer is not available. Which brings us to our next conversation, which is open space, which the staff discusses in the report surrounding the idea and the implementation of the sewer that we're proposing. There's a comment that talks about the health department requiring fencing. This is the case in other areas around the state, or could be, I should say. However, our county, to my knowledge, has yet to require that. There are quite a few projects right now that have been permitted and are existing and recently completed where fencing was not required. However, if fencing is required, the 3 fencing around the tanks that would have to be shown on that plan would reduce the square footage, would reduce the impervious, the open area by about 0.02. It'd be about 200 square feet of open space that would be lost, and it would still result in an open space of 20.06. However, I want to draw your attention to it's kind of hard to see, but the hatched area that's in green that shows up on the north side of the duplexes, in between the duplexes and to the south of the duplexes, it was shown as figurative just to show we were meeting the requirement. You can tell by looking at the site plan that that's not all the available open space. And so even if we were to add fencing, we would still meet that requirement and then some. I also want to talk about easements because this is something that historically has come up. In the past, we put this project on hold to hire an attorney, Ms. Gaffney, to review and propose what to do with the easements that are historically in between some of these parcels. Through that process and through the hiring of an additional surveyor, we found that the plat says, in quote, according to the dedication on page 1 of the plat, this is the historic plat 1969, it specifically states that where more than one lot is intended as a building site, the outside boundaries of said building site shall carry said easement. We sent that to county staff, Mr. Hockadell, who's here this morning, on January 18th of this year. January 19th, he's always very prompt. January 19th, the next day, he responded with this statement, quote, the easements along the interior of the lot lines would revert back to the outside boundaries per the dedication since the site is being used as one development. And so there is discussion in the staff report about the possibility of needing to vacate those easements. However, based on the plat and based on correspondence back and forth, I think that those comments probably would go away and do go away since this is one development. The last thing I want to talk about is deviations, and I want to bring to your attention 2 of them. We're requesting a deviation from the landscaping type D buffer And if you look at the chart that's in the staff report, it mentions a type A buffer. We would have no problem at all doing something that this board has seen pleasure with in the past, which would be requiring a type D buffer just without the wall, or as sometimes it's referred to, a type C buffer with D plantings. Would have no issues with that at all. Want to be good neighbors, want to be a steward of that, and so I would like to propose that as a deviation. And then number 2, in the staff report under conditions, the second condition on the staff report states the alleys used for ingress egress. I would love to see if it would be possible, as you guys consider this, to change that first word from the to any. Because as I stated before, I believe there's probably a solution with perhaps some new staff, new eyes looking at this, to where we can solve the issue of the alleys and perhaps even take access off of 41. We meet separation requirements, always have, but when the road was viewed as a roadway, it's a LDC requirement. You have to take access off the lower road. Now that it's not considered a road by staff, I would love to have the conversation again of 41. Wouldn't change the impervious area on the site because the alleyway was considered off of site and we were just accepting all of the drainage. But if you were to consider changing the word the to any, it would allow for, I believe, the terminology, the change would allow for the ability to comply with LDC standards as mentioned in the same comment, but also give some leeway and allowance for the possibility of relocating that entrance, which I think would clean up quite a bit of the discussion in the staff report. Lastly, before I conclude, if a solution cannot be met and we are left working with what we are working with again, we have no problem doing, the county would benefit because that is a used roadway. Call it an alley, call it an unimproved road, whatever you want to call it. It is utilized. In the staff report produced in 2021 for the variance, it's SV-21-03. On October 6th, 2021, the engineering division discusses the use of that alley by stating, in part, we cannot approve or support the request for a vacate, which we tried to do to vacate and join them together, because that alleyway is a public use, and it also includes the use of support services such as garbage trucks, pickup, water utility vehicles, other vehicles, and residents. And so the road, it is utilized. To me, if we were required to use that as the access, it is an improvement to that road that's being used currently as a two-way road, but it's at the owner's expense. The county shares no cost in that. It's an improvement of other structures, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So you see the site plan as presented. That's kind of the direction we were pushed to go in or had to go in because of previous reviews that we've had. Would love the opportunity to look at that again, but if this is where we are, I'm telling you that based on the staff report and based on common engineering practices, we could probably still come to a solution with the LDC utilizing it the way it is now. So in summary, this project meets the LDC standards for ISR, FAR, utilities. This project improves a public right-of-way, including the drainage of such, at no expense to the county. This project extends infrastructure at no expense to the county, that's the water lines. The only negative in the staff report seems to be a question of compatibility. The compatibility standard that's used in the staff report is 55 years old. And the staff report even mentions, which I thought was wise and interesting, a quote from a former county administrator that says, "It is difficult to speculate what Deltona planned for these future development areas, and that site vesting recognition is silent to the issue." The presence of mini storage is compatible, it's adjacent. The presence of mini storage in a project that has medium density residential close to it is something that we have seen in other areas of our county. I mentioned Target before, also right where my office is another example. This would not be a new mini storage facility. It would simply be the expansion of one, and it also provides a need for workforce housing in our area, which the staff report by default infers isn't something that this area has seen yet. by default would, in my mind, denote a need. Is there any questions that I can answer for you guys before staff presentation?
First, do we have any questions from the staff?
Yes, please, thank you. Just to clarify, Dr. Wilburn, on the access areas, I'm getting a little confused on what you're talking about and with the condition change. I know right now they're coming in on the alley and going into that unpermitted storage area, and they're having a little bit of a problem turning and going into that alley. What are you getting at with the condition change? Are you trying to say you're giving yourself the option to come off of 41? Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, I feel like if we change the to any, it gives
Okay.
the ability to, the preferred method, I think, for everybody would be off of 41. I think it meets current standards, it's reasonable. But if we had to, if in my mind, if we change that to say access to be off of 41, and they say no, then we're back to square one again. If you change it to any, we're still complying, but it gives freedom.
Yeah, the rear is actually not an alleyway, although it kind of looks like one. It's actually it could be a roadway. So going with what you're saying, perhaps alleys and or roadways used for ingress egress, and we can put something in for 41. I just don't understand how are you trying to get people into the warehouse area from 41?
Okay.
How
So it would
and
be,
out?
It would be a shared access like you normally would have. So we would come.
There we go.
We would come in and split right here. This pond would just be relocated or a pipe underneath a roadway. But our access would be a shared access here coming in. You would turn into the storage facility or you would turn into this facility. And then same thing, you would come in here and you would have a T-turn back here to come back out. Or we could provide cross access, but because this is not a roadway, I don't know that they would require that. This is where we originally proposed access, was a shared access between the two.
Okay, and if FDOT doesn't give you the cut on 41,
There's no median or anything, so.
right? So you think you'll get that?
440 feet would be the separation, and we're 860 feet.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the board?
I have one. So on the topic of the access, like I still don't understand where you're gaining access from currently right now without the change to condition number 2 with the word. Where is access on this site plan right now?
A 24-foot wide road right here is what we have proposed.
Okay, so that's when I look at it, I believe that's an unpaved road currently right now, right?
It is, the survey shows that back here, that same 30-foot has a 12-foot wide asphalt roadway. But
Okay.
this right here is not currently improved. It may have some lime rock, but it's not improved.
And so your applicant is recommending or saying that they would improve that per
So-
county standards for access?
Originally, in the email dialogue back and forth between the county and myself, we wanted to improve, basically use this as an access to the entrance, which is common on other sites. And then it was stated that no, if you were to improve this, we would want the entire thing approved or improved, because as they mentioned, there's a lot of service vehicles and other vehicles that use this, I'm gonna call it a roadway. But yes,
Right.
we're proposing to improve the whole thing.
Yeah, I remember when it came before us before with the vacate, and I'm pretty sure I was one that voted against it because of the, the access for the garbage trucks and stuff like that, keeping those coming in and off of 41 right there. So if you put that access, if you improve that access and the project is approved, they're gonna drive in between the two storage facilities, or they're gonna go around the back on that easement and access it from the back alley or roadway that we're calling it?
They would access between the two storage units.
And that's not typical, though. Like, typically, we have these storage unit people come in, they don't want anybody going in their facilities. They want them completely fenced off, no cross-access, things like that. So
you're correct, but with cross-access requirements, a lot of times there's no way we can avoid that on site.
Right.
And we did try to have a frontage road here, but as you can see, the ponds have to be right on Highway 41. That's where all the drainage goes, which is typically where we'd have cross-access. And so for this particular site, both of those buildings are completely enclosed, all climate controlled. And so, safety-wise, there's secure perimeters across the street. This would have complete public access, to your point, right through the center of both of those buildings.
So there's no way to improve the alley to the east and bring access in and around the storage centers and then into your driveway access there?
100% you could. However, I still think that if that were to be approved in that direction, you would still have to provide cross-access. So we're still left with them driving right through. But yes, you could.
Cross-access from which properties? The storage facilities
yeah.
to the
From
well,
the
wouldn't the cross-access be included on that alleyway turned into a road to the east? Wouldn't that be considered cross-access?
Yeah, I'm saying, I see your point. If my understanding with cross-access is, if we were to pave this, and come in right here, which I think is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, and have this be a secured facility, I believe cross-access would still be required from here to there.
So in my understanding, I think that cross-access can go anywhere. We've talked about it in the past. It can go in the front, in the back, in the middle. It goes wherever. So I think that rear alleyway, if that's the way we're gaining access, in my opinion, that would satisfy the cross-access portion or, requirement.
I would love to agree, but I think the reason I don't is because we're using a public means to cross-access.
The alleyway meaning?
Yeah. But, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Okay, I'll save that question for the staff. And then
Okay.
I have one other question regarding the green space with the, pretty much the other, qualification that the county's talking about where the fencing around the septic tanks and stuff like that. So I live in a house that has a septic tank or I did live in a house that had a septic tank out front and my septic tank wasn't fenced off. So
All right,
what's different about this one?
Good question. These are aerobic systems. They're monitored, they pump air, and they're a little bit different than a standard septic. So their tanks typically are not buried. They have a lid, usually 2 foot, 20 inches in diameter, 24 inches, and it sticks up usually 6 to 8 inches off the ground. It's green, sometimes orange. Those are required to be monitored, and I'm apologizing because I didn't read this in my presentation, but typically the fence is not required because the monitoring company puts their own locks on the lids. So there's no safety hazard. But that's what they're talking about, the lids being above the ground. There's usually 2 for each one of those, and they're in series. So the area may be 6 foot by 4 foot in terms of a fence if there was one to be required. But that's why they're talking about it. It's not a buried tank. It's an elevated lid, but again, it's locked by the maintenance company, the septic maintenance
Okay.
company.
So no environmental hazards or health or safety hazards with the drain field area being
It's
not
a normal
fenced?
drain field. That's correct.
Okay, and people and kids play on top of drain fields?
Correct, all the time.
Okay,
It's,
thank you.
The drain field is no different from any other. It's the treatment in the tanks.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Worthington.
Dr. Wilburn, are these storage units being, the doors to the storage units are also, it's accessed on that, what you're planning for access management to multifamily, their doors are facing that road as well?
All of the doors are interior.
So you could potentially have people coming in and out of their storage unit parked along the sideway, and that's your access point where you're gonna have traffic flowing through there also?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Oh, the entry's on the end.
Is the entry on the
I'm just
end?
trying to figure out how they get into their storage units.
You would have, there are 10 by 30 loading zones built into that footprint that are subtracted from the building square footage and added to the asphalt square footage. They're on the building plans, which I don't have. But yes, they would park in the loading zones and access their units. And that standard is, there's an LDC requirement for the number of loading zones.
So you're gonna have loading zones, and that's also going to be the roadway?
Yeah, but it doesn't interfere or block the 24-foot wide roadway. Matter of fact, I think that's shown as 30.
Thank you.
Currently, right now, on a lot of facilities, you'll have the roadway, and then you'll have almost like a parallel parking type loading zone adjacent to a long run of units, and that's what this is also, or would be.
Any other questions? Commissioner Shara.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I did go to the site and take a site visit, so I'm familiar with what you're talking about. But just for clarification, on your drawing, immediately to the top and the left of the blue structures, is that the existing mini warehouse, the U-Haul facility?
The existing facility is on this side of where we're showing that roadway.
Is that the same owner or a different owner?
Same.
Same owner. And then the alley that we're talking about, which is now, not paved, is the access road that you're showing just to the north of those blue structures.
Yes.
So that is the alley that would have to be improved, and it would be one directional flow, correct?
According to the staff report now, if improved, it would have to be one direction. That's correct.
And the roadway or alleyway that goes to to the east, to the right of that blue structure, which is, semi-paved or had been paved at one time, and there are fire hydrants and a forced main service there. Is that also part of your land?
It is, I thought it was an alley, but Ms. Katu just called it something different, so, no, it's off-site.
Okay, so you would have to, if you were going to find an efficient way for traffic flow, not through the center of your mini storage, you would have to have public access on that road.
It would include both, yes.
And does your proposal include improving that road?
It would have to,
And
yes.
maintaining that road?
Actually, don't know that it talks about maintenance in the staff report because it's public. I believe it would be, no, it's in the staff report. It would be built to county standards, and it would be county maintained once approved after construction. That's my understanding.
So if
As it sits right now.
Understand. So if the townhomes would be approved, or the housing structures would be approved, the access to those housing structures would be from the front of each of those?
Half of them would be from the front, yes.
I'm looking at the drawing, just working to understand it. It looks like half of them would have their front access from that same road that we're just discussing.
Correct, half of them, yes.
And then there would be an internal roadway to the west, which would give you frontal access to the remaining.
That's correct.
And so, again, you would be looking to use that existing roadway, but it would be not a roadway that you would maintain, but it would be critical. The frontage of your condos or your townhomes would open up onto that road, which means you'd have a series of driveways?
Duplexes, but yes.
So you'd have a series of driveways that open up onto that road?
There's 1, 2, 3, there's 7 of them, 7 driveways shown.
Okay.
I'm trying to find in the staff report where it mentions the maintenance. It would be county maintained on county property.
And is there a positive track record for these aerobic digesters that you're referring to for the septic system?
In just a few years, we'll probably have everybody having to do them. So yes.
So this is proven technology that's been applied
It's-
in similar situations?
It's the way the state wants us to head, yes, for everything.
Okay. Is this a state requirement in terms of the type and methodology for those digesters, or for that septic system?
It meets the state statute, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We get the staff presentation.
Good morning, Melissa Morris, planner. I'll be presenting application AA 2024-00002. This is a map of the subject property. Lots 27 through 30 will be utilized for the mini storage expansion, and tract C will be utilized for the multifamily. This is an aerial view of the subject property. This is lot 27, which at this current time has unpermitted storage on it. This is a view of the tract C, which will be the multifamily. This is the alleyway between the existing and the storage expansion. The alley is proposed to be the only access to the project. It will need to be improved to county standards. And this is a view of the other alleyway behind the property. Technical service has stated that it is not wide enough for two-way traffic. The subject property is to the right of the roadway. To the left of the roadway will all be single-family designated lots in the Citrus Springs community. This is looking north across 41, and that is the Withlacoochee Trail. Behind that is more a single-family Citrus Springs. This is the original site plan as submitted, and this is actually a revised site plan that was submitted in February, and it actually shows the 4 INRB septic systems. The light green is all the open space. And I just want to kind of surmise with our staff concerns. We do have concerns with intensity. The proposed multi-use application could be too intense. We have some concerns with density. The density is greater than the surrounding area. It proposes 14 duplexes or 28 dwelling units. There are no other multifamily in the area of Citrus Springs. We also have some concerns with the proposed septic system. I spoke with environmental health. They have no concerns with, playing and with the drain fields, but the location of them where the lids are accessible to people could pose a concern, and they may require that they be fenced even though they are locked. Concerned with open space, if the 4 access lids were to be fenced, it may reduce access and open space. I think that was already kind of cleared up by Dr. Wilburn. And then our last concern is access, which I'm going to have to default to technical services on because there are going to be some questions about that I just can't answer. Any questions?
Thank you. Does the applicant, Dr. Wilburn, do you have any questions for staff?
No.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for staff? All right, I do have one question on the ATUs. Completely agree with the environmental about the fencing area. Do you know in our county, I know these systems exist in our county, but do you know of any that are not fenced in?
I do not. I can get with environmental services and see if environmental health has any knowledge of that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this time the public portion of the meeting will be open. If there's anyone present who would like to speak on this application, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes and organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any documentation that you want to enter into record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. Anyone?
Good morning, my name is Janet Barrick, and that's B-A-R-E-K. I live at 7022 North Santos Drive, Citrus Springs, Florida. I read through, and I had some simple questions. Number one, there's 2 separate deeds, one for 27, 28, 230, and one for tract C. Okay? So we're talking about 2 separate entities, not one. It may be one company making it, but I want to know why it's under one project. Number 2, the egress and ingress. When I saw the picture that the staff took, That's exactly what it looks like. How are you gonna get a bus through there? How are you gonna get the garbage through there? How are you gonna get a minimum of 56 cars? If you're gonna allow for the housing, I am sure that the duplexes will have two cars per house. That's 56 cars, in and out. There is no real way to get in. That back alley is a back alley. Okay, so when I look at this project, I say, okay, they bought the land in 2021 and 2020. They knew from their deeds, the warranty deeds that they purchased and paid for, that this was not a project they could do on that land. The warehouse, yes. The warehouse space has been there. I was at BOCC when that was approved for the other, when they expanded, because that's what they're looking for. This is on 41. 41 currently is not approved to be 4-laned. However, if you think about it, it's gonna be 4-laned. May take 10 more years, or maybe 15, but 41 will be 4-lane. Where's the fourth, where are they gonna get the 41 access and egress and ingress? Okay? It is not appropriate. We do have duplexes right off of Deltona, which is about 3.5 miles from where this project is. They have proper ingress, egress, because they're on normal streets. The streeting is definitely a little bit on the weird side, okay? Hold on, because I had other questions. Currently, Citrus County Board of County Commissioners is no longer accepting new roads. So where are they gonna get the county to accept a new road if they're gonna maybe make it 50 feet wide, so it's 2 lanes, 1 in, 1 out? How about the people that are having to go through, like you said, is the bus for the school gonna go through the storage units on a daily basis to pick up students? Or are they gonna be on that little access road, and where are they gonna turn around? I mean, it can't go this way, because that's all dirt. It can't go that way, it's all dirt. Are they going to improve the 2 roads 100%? They don't own the roads. That's just a couple of the questions I had.
Thank you. Anyone else? Next speaker. Anyone? Last call. Dr. Wilborn, do you have a rebuttal? At this time, I'm closing the public portion of the hearing down, and we'll bring the discussion back to the board. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Worthington.
I am not in favor of this application, mainly because I cannot support or understand their access management plan.
Thank you.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Shara.
related to the multifamily units, I'm not prepared to support it either. I guess I do have a question that since these are separate parcels, there is one application. We have the mini warehouse, but it doesn't seem to be freestanding from the multifamily. So I'm not sure if it's we vote on them separately or only as one application on a combined basis. The reason I'm not supporting the multifamily is I don't think that the ingress, egress, access roads have been properly thought out, planned, or discussed. It does not look, for many reasons that both the public and my colleagues have mentioned, that this isn't adequately thought out for either normal traffic or emergency traffic. And going through the center of a mini warehouse with people moving in and out, as infrequent as that may be, looks like a problem waiting to happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bramlett.
I would just echo the thoughts of the last 2 commissioners. I want to support this project. I have confusion and questions regarding access. So I feel like if the applicant could get with the county, they could sort of figure out the access a little bit better, present it in a better, more understandable manner for us, that I would be in support of it. But currently, right now, the only reason I wouldn't support it is because of the access.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Worthington.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number AA 2024-00002 inconsistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends denial of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
We have a first by Commissioner Worthington,
Second.
a second by Commissioner Shara. Any further discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Our next application is CPA/AA/PUD-2023-00011. If the applicant come forward as we get an introduction, please. I'm sorry, if we get the applicant to come forward while we get the introduction.
This application is Kathy Eball for the crossings. This request is to change the future land use map, the LDC Atlas map, and to establish a PUD on 207 acres to allow for various residential and commercial uses. This is an aerial view of the subject property. This is a view of the subject property from County Road 491. Looking north on County Road 491. Looking south on County Road 491. Looking across County Road 491. This is the generalized master plan as submitted by the applicant. And this is a more detailed master plan as submitted by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Appreciate everybody's time. Staff, thank you very much. And we're back here again. So we're going to be talking about the same thing. I just wanted to,
Can you please state your name?
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
for the
James
record?
Dix, DIX Developments, Lake Mary, Florida.
Thank you, sir.
I usually don't get quite as nervous, but I mean, there's a lot of well-dressed folks from the mine behind me. They do make me a little nervous, but I'm sure they'll have some great things to talk about. We'll pick up what we left off from the last time. But I really wanted to just kind of bring up, we had gone down, we had some great input from the residents. You'll notice from the plan, we made some modifications based on those comments. I went back and watched it again to see what we could do. We did meet with Mr. Dixon's team, got some great input there, made some modifications as well. And the bottom line is, for me, contrary to what you read, if you do read social media or some of the sound offs, I mean, we're looking for great projects that we can be proud of. For me, this project was, and for a better word, we'll use affordable housing, but there's a lot of terms. We didn't just ask for a certain number of units just to say, hey, we want this amount. We looked at what we could potentially do under the PD and so forth so that we could create a lower price unit. So I give you an example. If we just cut that down, you're automatically adding $40,000 to every home. That's not affordable. I mean, even if you look at the numbers, you wipe out a mass amount of people that can afford that at today's interest rates, that extra $40,000, even $20,000. So that's kind of, how we got to begin. We did make a few issues in communication. We solved those. Again, if you notice in the top right-hand corner, which is the northeast corner, we had some concerns from residents about some drainage and stuff, so we made sure that there's a lot of green buffer there, some DRAs up there as well that would potentially help solve some of those problems that were brought up. But really, I just wanted to say that, this process works because it was those comments that we were able to go out, and I think we created something a little bit better, and I hope we answered those. I've got my team here that's going to come up and do the formal presentation. We'd love to answer any questions you have along the way. Please just let us know. The mine's going to come up here and they're going to give their whole presentation. They're well-dressed and well-suited to be able to speak into that. So I look forward to rebuttal if needed. And other than that, just if you don't mind, I'd ask my staff to come up and do the formal presentation, unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner, Chairman, and other commissioners. My name is Jay Brown. I'm with JB Pro. I'm the president and principal engineer of JB Pro and working with Dick's Development on this project. We did make our presentation the last time when we came before you in April, so I will try not to be terribly redundant. I'll try to get through it quickly. Do we have the presentation up?
I'm working on it.
Okay,
We're a bit technically challenged here. Hang on a
That's
second.
okay,
It's,
that's okay.
Government equipment.
I will say, and I will also reiterate Mr. Dix's comments in terms of having been before you once before, having come before in April. And that's what we did as a team. We sat back down, we listened to the comments, and I know we did a continuance last time, but we did get a lot of feedback from you. We did particularly get feedback from the school board in terms of, being close to them. So we went from a required buffer adjacent to their property, I believe, of 10 foot, and we created a 75-foot buffer continuously along the school board property that will be completely vegetated. So we feel like that extremely exceeds the code requirements for that, and we listened and we know that they have concerns there, so we wanted to be able to have that buffering. We did lots of other things. One of the main things, and you may recall that when we submitted the last time, is there was concerns we had only showed on our master plan just the one connection, and staff indicated that we would need to have more connections, so we added those to our plans. We also heard from the neighbors to the north about the compatibility of their properties to the north, and so again, where a 10-foot buffer might have been required, we changed that to a 40-foot buffer. So we far exceeded the buffers. We listened. We also, one of the things that was brought up at our previous meeting is that there wasn't enough specificity in the layout itself to kind of see the project and the buffers and the open spaces and how we were connecting to South Lecanto Highway. And so we provided a more designed master plan to go along with our PUD master plan. So with that said, I just, again, reiterating the things that we as a group got together on and tried to improve based on the comments that we heard from our last public hearing. So with that said, I will, again, I'm Jay Brown. I won't go through all that, but just from the standpoint of our presentation, we have 206.7 acres. It is vacant. One of the things about this is it is in the corridor planning zone. So infrastructure is available, utilities, water and sewer. This is a pretty close to ideal location. We have a collector roadway that has plenty of capacity. The property is vacant. We have good buffering. So it's a fairly ideal location to do a development like this, a mixed-use development. We have an existing land use that is low-density residential, PSO, and GNC, so the whole idea is that we would combine it. Same thing with our zoning. It has a variability of zoning from low-density residential mobile home usage and low-density residential, the different commercials, professional offices. So the idea is that we would change that to a residential mixed-use land use, and we would do a PDR, a planned residential development, with a PUD for our zoning, our revised zoning. Again, there's many policies and goals that promote this type of development, that they, guide development to the locations where infrastructure is available, where utilities are available. And so, that's kind of what sets this up. Your comp plan indicates that in this type of area, a PUD, you can do a mixed-use PUD up to 6 units per acre. Our proposed development is at 5.7 units per acre in the residential. And if you take it over the full 206 acres, it's actually closer to about 4.7, 4.8 units per acre. Again, more comprehensive plan policies that promote plan developments, that promote, development where central water and sewer and infrastructure transportation is available, the medium density residential district, the promotion of doing this type of development as a PUD. And of course, the reason why you would do a PUD is that you can work with staff, you can place conditions on the zoning as opposed to just doing a straight zoning to a higher residential density or some other type of zoning within the PUD. You can look at the issues of design. You can make sure that you're doing things that are compatible. You can require us to have that larger buffer adjacent to the school. You can require us to have the larger buffer adjacent to the neighbors to the north. we can do things with conditions that you can't do in a straight zoning. Examined all the concurrency situations associated with this project. The state has concurrency standards. We had to look at them for sanitary sewer, potable water, solid waste, stormwater. We did the analysis for our development and indicated that, concurrency is available for these potable water, solid waste. From the stormwater standpoint, we have to design stormwater management systems to conform to your Citrus County comprehensive plan and land development regulations. We'll have to get a permit from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. So clearly standards are in place that we will design by when we come back for final development plans. Again, the plan to do this project is through the planned residential development with a PUD. So this master plan, basically what it does is it lays out all the different areas that we would develop. And we have single-family detached, single-family attached, multifamily, and then we have a small commercial area that you can see there in the front adjacent to Lecanto Highway 491. This just blows it up a little bit. So on kind of the northern side, there is up to 400 single-family detached units, 300 attached units. Those are the blue areas that you might see there. And then multifamily is the area on the southern end in the middle. There is up to 50,000 square feet of non-residential. I would suggest to you that that is a low amount of non-residential use that's adjacent to the highway there. 50,000 square feet has a very low floor area ratio compared to what's allowed in your code. So we're not trying to overbuild the retail, commercial, office, area. It's ideally situated adjacent to 491 Lecanto Highway. There are required impervious surface ratios that are in the code. There is a request for these to be used here, which are a little bit higher than your code because the code was written for much bigger lots. So if you take that with the smaller lots that we have in our project, and of course, one of the reasons why planning is going in the direction of more smaller lots, and of course it's happening all over Florida, is that we do have the opportunity to provide open space. And you can't necessarily see that totally on this map, but you can see the recreation areas, the green areas in the middle there. That's where we have some proposed active trails and fields and more active recreation complex. But we have open space throughout the project, and you can see that in the conceptual master plan that we have. This is, again, a little bit more of a bubble plan for the PUD itself, which defines the areas and the locations and the densities and that sort of thing. And then our master plan is kind of the real layout that we use to build out this piece. And the thing I would point out on that, well, I'll go forward with this because we'll get to that, but lot sizes and building setbacks are pretty straightforward. We did make a couple of minor modifications. I don't think they're that significant, and staff has indicated that they are very similar to other projects like this in Citrus County. And again, buffers was a big deal. And I think I might have said 40 feet on the north. If I did, it's 30 feet, so I apologize for saying that. But we did have a much smaller buffer before. You can see the 75-foot buffers on the south. And there was one request that staff had as far as a deviation, and I think it was just maybe us not totally understand the buffer requirements, in particular as how it relates to the non-residential. And so the one buffer that you see there that says 15-foot type B buffer, and that would be on the backside of the residential. I don't know if this has a pointer. Does this have a pointer, John?
Yeah, it's right to push. There you go.
Push and hold.
There you go.
The center one, okay. Yep. Not seeming to get it to.
Cat's coming. Our
Okay.
expert's here. So good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So,
Yeah.
so right here, this 15-foot type B buffer, and that is between the non-residential and the multifamily that would be here, requires a 15-foot buffer. And I think we called it a type B, and in the code it requires a type C. So staff indicated that was a deviation that we requested, but we're more than happy to just change that to a type C. We also have a lot of open space between that and where any of the multifamily units are if you look on our layout. But we did not really intend to try to deviate there. And the other thing was the buffer that's not shown here, but there's a buffer between the non-residential and this property to the south. And we interpreted the code requirement to be a 5-foot buffer, and I think it needs to be a landscape buffer. So we would just proffer that we have no intent of deviating on those. So we would just abide by the code requirement buffer. Our intent was never to deviate those. I think we had a interpretation problem with understanding exactly what would be required. So really our intent is to meet all the code requirement buffers and then exceed those in areas where it appeared to be sensitive. And that's what we've tried to do. So adjacent on the south and then adjacent on the north, we made those buffers wider and promoted, additional landscaping in those areas. Open space and recreation. Again, the only open space that we show on this PUD master plan is the recreation area. And that's because when we get into final design of individual units and things, things can move and the actual location of the open spaces that'll happen with the final design will change. But I can tell you that the requirement is 20% open space in general for Citrus County, and in our plan, we have about 40% of our property in this 206 acres is open area, is not being used for development purposes. We will abide by all the roadway, parking, and landscaping requirements. There was a comment about parallel parking that was discussed a little bit at our last hearing. Parallel parking is something that's being used by a lot of developments now because it provides additional parking within right-of-ways for areas that don't provide enough parking on their individual lots. When you're doing a 1-acre lot, you can park people all over your front yard and all over the place. But in somewhat smaller lots, visitor parking can become an issue. So one of the best practices in design these days is to provide parallel parking in these areas where it's feasible, and that provides, visitor parking and additional parking, that sort of thing. Staff did not support that. I think there was even some commentary from your commissioners that they weren't in favor of parallel parking. We certainly, don't need to push that. We do think it's a best management practices, but if the commission doesn't agree, that's not a problem for us. If it's not required, we think it would be a good thing to add into the development, and it's commonly being done in most every development we're doing these days. Phasing, lighting, and signage is pretty straightforward. There is an issue that staff had in terms of conditions or deviation associated with signage, and we can get into that when we talk about the conditions. But basically, we're just requesting signage at the entries, at the main entries into the project, and then also at the non-residential area. Each one of those blocks of red that you see there, we're proposing that one sign be allowed. And the deviation and the staff concern is centered around the location of the signs in that area and whether or not the signs can be allowed in the first 20 feet adjacent to Lecanto Highway, which is a required buffer. And this is kind of what that's talking about. So we're proposing an entry feature development identification sign, which would be at these locations. This is an entry point, and a third entry point. So there would be allowed one sign adjacent to those entry points. And then those would be development signs, this is the crossings. But the retail, which will have potentially a mix of businesses, will need to have some sort of a sign for their non-residential development. And so we're just requesting one on each side. So one in this area and one in this area. And the problem is that if we put the signs behind the buffer, the 25-foot buffer, honestly, they're just useless. You can't see them. I was actually looking at the sign of my business. We were talking about this the other day, And if our sign is within 5 feet of the right-of-way, for example, and if it was 25 feet back behind a bunch of landscaping, I mean, you wouldn't be able to see it. So what we proposed is that the signs could be allowed within the right-of-way, but it could not interrupt the buffering. In other words, you'd still have to plant, the landscaping would be behind it, the landscaping, you could have low shrubbery, for example, in front of it, so the buffering would continue, but there would be an opening where the sign is. And that's all we were proposing. And then the sign would have to correspond to the Citrus County Code in terms of height and size and all those things. We're not proposing any deviation. We just would like to be able to put it in the first 25 feet. So we tried to get creative with how we do that and the language of, how that condition could be written. Kind of worked with staff a little bit, and maybe they can comment on that, but that's our one request that was identified as a deviation. We didn't have these with us when we presented to you in April. And so it was somewhat of a concern from the commission, I believe, that you can just see kind of the bubble plan, which is the PUD plan, but you really didn't kind of know what we were proposing. So this is our master plan. And this is our single-family residential up here in the yellow. These are the townhomes or the detached units that you would see here. This is a large recreation area. This is stormwater with walking trails through it all throughout, and we'll have walking trails throughout the development. This is the multifamily development here, the retail, non-residential uses, which could be office or retail, are out here adjacent to the highway. I think you can see with all of the open area, as I mentioned, when we calculate this, it's actually 43% of the site is paved, so to speak, or non-lot area. However, when we do final development plan, there will be, sidewalks added, some things that will add some impervious area, but we will have, a large amount of open space on this project. The design is pretty straightforward. It's an efficient layout. We kind of have a little bit of separation of uses, but they're connected in kind of the center with recreation space that can be used by all of the uses, the single-family attached, the detached, the multifamily. The multifamily will probably have some of their own additional, recreation space, like a pool or something as well. So that's our layout, and happy to, answer any questions if anybody has on that. And then we also wanted to show you kind of really a view of, what this might look like. So I'll go through a couple of pictures that we have that kind of show some of this area. You can see on the left the single-family attached homes backing up to the recreation area. You can see, some of the other homes, the single-family detached homes. The artist did a really nice job of kind of, trying to show this, and this is a good view where you see the non-residential, the commercial area up front with some retention to the left, the multifamily in the back. You can see the townhomes on the far back and to the right over, oops. If I can go backwards here. Yeah, so, these would be the single-family attached units back here, multifamily, and then all over in here is the single-family detached units all through here. Recreation complex here, which, you see again, the recreation complex in the middle with the attached units over here, single family in this area. I just think these kind of views give you a little better idea of what this looks like, and we thought it would be nice for you to see. You can see and this is based on our design that we just presented. I mean, this is a very realistic rendering of what this proposes to be. These are our streets. We're very intent on making sure that we place sidewalks on both sides of the road so we have a very safe access throughout our neighborhoods, street trees, street lights. Doing nice streets makes all the difference in the world as we do these developments. And you can even kind of see here how, you have the 2-car garages and people like to just park in the street and that sort of thing. So sometimes providing that additional parking, and you fit them in places where you have the utility strip between the curb and the sidewalk is the same, area that you need to add parallel parking. So there's places where you round corners and you got stretches of road where there aren't lots adjacent, where it's a nice place to fit in some parallel parking spaces throughout. So that's the only reason why we proposed that. And I know there was some concern here. And again, Mr. Dix made it very clear to me, and we want to make it clear to you, that if that's a problem with staff or with your technical services folks or the commission, you know, we're not hung up on that, but we just wanted to make sure you understood why we were proposing it. Again, you know, just another view of this, you can see the multifamily in the background. And kind of the thing is, you know, best planning practices are trying to use a mix of uses. I just attended a mixed use symposium last week, as a matter of fact, up in North Florida. And we had, you know, 10 different speakers talking about the value of these mixed use communities and the need to mix single family attached and detached and multifamily, and have, you know, all of our citizens that have different housing needs to be able to enjoy, you know, mixed use developments that, you know, promote different modes of housing and people getting together and recreating and spending time together. So anyway, that is what we are proposing. We also did some additional transportation analysis to try to look at South Lecanto Highway and make sure that capacity was available. So we generate about 600 primary AM peak hour trips for the project at full build out. And that's important because the AM peak hour is the biggest usage on South Lecanto Highway. So we looked at, you know, all of this area. We did traffic counts at different intersections, and we'll have to provide very detailed traffic studies with the final development plan. As a matter of fact, staff has conditions about, you know, required signal warrant analysis, turn lane analysis, all those type of things will have to be analyzed and work with your technical services folks as we move forward. But we did some preliminary stuff with Anthony Luke as a local transportation engineer here in Citrus County. And so we used him, and he looked at those intersections, and specifically we looked at Lecanto Highway, which is, this shows from State Road 44 to Grover Cleveland Boulevard. It's a level of service C, and if we were to add in the trips that we have, the project would still remain at level of service C on this highway. So, or it would be between level of service C and level of service D, but the classification for this functional level of service is level of service D. Right now it's operating at level of service C. So, and we would be required to provide full traffic studies, you know, again with our final development plans, which we will of course do. So now, as far as the staff comments and deviations, one thing is that this presentation was required to be provided to your staff at the beginning of July. And since it was a new submittal, staff did a new staff report that came out in mid-July that we received. And so these comments and our responses had to do with the previous staff report. So I do have, at this point, I'm not sure this is, because this was based on our previous staff report. We had to submit this before we got the new staff report. And for the most part, it's very, very similar. But I had prepared another, address of those comments and deviations. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go to my notes, because my understanding is we're not allowed to introduce a new presentation today or anything to address those comments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of run through these, verbally or whatever. But in the staff comments, not many of them, needed address, and we generally agreed with them. The first one said the ability to adjust each proposed use by 10% is not supported by staff as it could exceed the maximum allowable density. And again, that was a previous comment. What we propose to do is allow the ability to shift the number, like if we did a little less single family attached, for example, and wanted to do some single family detached, that would be allowed, but you still could not exceed the maximum allowable units, which was 1,000 units for the development in total. The next comment just had to do with the 20% open space, and we did propose to provide the 20% open space, that's not an issue. What we had requested is that the active recreation uses and the stormwater management areas would be allowed to be in those open spaces. In the comprehensive plan, when you have a PUD, you're allowed to do those type of things, but we have to request that specifically through this procedure as part of our PUD. So that is one area that we were proposing. And then the staff cannot support an ISR maximum of 100% for non-residential uses. That's been corrected, and it is, I think it's 70% that's for the non-residential, so I think that's been worked out with staff. Setbacks, they did not have a problem with. So as we work through these, the staff conditions. The staff conditions were only slightly different, but I think it's important to run through these. Basically, they said in condition number 1 that we would need to update what I said about updating the date is because the date in there was February 6, 2024, and this just kind of summarizes with the PUD. And it was based on our original submittal, but now I think that's been adjusted. And again, this doesn't show the current date of July 6th. We agree with all of these conditions, and we agree with all of the more recent conditions that staff has proposed. They're very, very similar. They talk about that we must connect to water and sewer. We have no problem with that. The stormwater must be designed to meet the Citrus County Land Development Code. We also agree with requiring us to meet those additional design standards for non-residential projects. We had no issues with that. The tree preservation plans. Again, the perimeter buffers, we no longer request that deviation that was indicated. And if I'm not mistaken, when staff makes your presentation, I mean, you will present the conditions and the deviations, is that correct?
Yeah, I can go over those.
Okay. So just to be sure, we're not requesting the deviation. I guess we would reserve the right to come back up if there's any discussion about that. Landscaping, we have no problem with that. We would agree to those conditions. All of the same thing here in terms of the technical services division. And again, they had requested that we must have a second entrance and they have to be 440 feet apart to meet their access guidelines on LeCanto Highway. We're totally fine with meeting that, and the master concept plan that we presented definitely meets those conditions. So we have no problems. We agree with these conditions. Demonstrate provisions for active recreation and required open space. And again, as far as the open space goes, the only thing that we're proffering today to you for your consideration is that we would be allowed to have the active recreation, stormwater, gathering open spaces. The open spaces that are designed in a development like this would count towards the open space. And the only mechanism in the code that allows that is through the PUD process. And that's what we're doing here is a PUD. So I can provide some language for that, but basically we're just requesting that those be allowed to be counted in the open space, that our active recreation, our stormwater management, our trails, the things that we have in our PUD would count towards that 20% open space. The other things about standards would apply if it's not part of our plan we agree with, minor modifications. So again, we're in agreement with all of the staff conditions, with the only exception is that we would like to have the open space include those things. So I can also help if we want to have a written a write-up of that particular condition. But with that said, last thing, I just wanted to kind of summarize if that's possible. And of course, this is our request that we amend the future land use and that we amend the land use atlas, and that we would approve a PUD from the zoning standpoint. So in conclusion, I would just say I totally believe that this is a responsible design It's an efficient design. It's within your planning services area and your corridor planning zone. It's an efficient use of infrastructure. I mean, this is best planning practices to try to do these, to try to encourage more density so that we don't have to keep gobbling up land. You know, this is not promoting urban sprawl, because this is where your comprehensive plan is telling us that we should be developing. But if we develop at too low a density, it does encourage urban sprawl, because you know, more and more land is just going to be used up, and we can't prevent the people that are coming to Florida that love what you have here in Citrus County. In our design, we have a very large open space and recreation area. We feel like we have made things to have this project very well buffered to the neighbors. And really a PUD is what enables us to do the right kind of development, and that's what we're here asking for. So we would just ask for you to approve our request, and we would be available to answer any questions you might have at any time, you know, now or after the staff makes their presentation.
Thank you. Staff have any questions?
Yes, sir, I do have. With the interchangeability, I know we discussed this a little bit last time, but I just want to make sure we have the clarification on it. You know, you have in there that the interchangeability is between the residential types, so that would be the single-family detached, single-family attached, and the multifamily. But it also has the 10%. So is the 10% provision that no residential type can change beyond 10%, or is that just the area denoted for those types? Could you?
Sure. The idea would be that we could, if the, you know, really this condition is about market flexibility. If folks want to buy the detached units or they want to buy the attached units, we just would like to be able to possibly substitute. The trip generation is not significantly different. The use of the recreation and open space within the development is not significantly different. So the ability to just, if we needed to do more of the detached or more of the attached, or if the development came with multifamily and wanted to do, instead of 300 units, they wanted to do 320, and it fit their building types and that type of thing, that we would just be reducing the other single family if that happened. But under no circumstances could it be more than the 10%. So for instance, we have a maximum of 300 single-family detached units or single-family attached units. So if we wanted, we could do 330 of those, but we would have to reduce the detached by 30 in order to do that, because we would still not exceed any of those of the major threshold of 1,000 units. So that's really the only reason, is just the flexibility depending on the use. You know, if somebody comes and says, we have this really great multifamily product that we can do here, but in order to make it work here, we need to do 320 units instead of 300, then we would take 20 units away from one of the other two categories. That's the only purpose, and it's fairly common. I mean, we're doing a layout now today on something that's going to develop over the next 10 years, 20 years maybe, and the reality is that we don't know exactly what the needs are going to be of all of our residents, you know, at that time. So it's just a little bit of flexibility. But again, making sure that the intensity doesn't change. So that's the idea.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, on the multifamily, for example, if there was more multifamily units, that's actually less traffic. They generate less traffic than the single-family detached units. So the intensity, I don't think, would suffer at all from allowing that substitution. But that's all it is.
All right. And at the last meeting, you know, we had some representatives of the mine across the street attend, and they had some concerns. Were you able to contact them and have any discussions with the mine?
I know that Mr. Dix did, that he was, you know, working on that and had some relationships there, and he can probably address that. I think what we committed to at the last meeting is that we would have deed restrictions in our HOAs, in our deeds, that we would make sure that all our residents were aware of the mine across the street. We totally respect the fact that there's a mine there and they have legitimate concerns and they want to continue to operate as they're operating. And I think that our residents need to know that that mine is there. They need to understand what it means. You know, I think 95% of the time, the mine is a very innocuous neighbor. I mean, they hardly even know it's there. I mean, I've been down here, visited this site, 5 different times, and, I've never seen any activity or heard anything. So I don't think the mine is a general issue for our neighbors. But I think what the mine's concern is there are times when they make a lot of noise and they're vibrating and they're doing the things that they're doing. And they don't want our neighbors, having a problem with it. But truthfully, whether we're developing at 4 units per acre or 5 units per acre or 6 units per acre, that's not going to change. There's going to be a couple of people that'll probably complain about the mine. No matter what they do today, no matter what they say today, there's going to be somebody, no matter how much we do to educate them, because people are just all different. And they're concerned about, having folks that, don't want the mine there. But the mine is there. They have the right to be there. They're going to be there. They're permitted to be there. They have met the criteria of the land development codes and the comp plan. That's a legitimate use. It's a legitimate right. So our job is to notify our residents that they're there, to notify them that there are issues with the mine, that they will make some noise, that they will do that their trucks, coming and going, that sort of thing. But frankly, I wouldn't mind living across the street from that. I mean, it's a pretty decent neighbor if you ask me. So we don't see it as a big issue for our development at all. I know they see it differently, and they're going to tell you they see it differently. But I think practically, if you really think about it, they have their interests for the mine. Their mine, develops products that are used, that'll be used across the street when we're pouring sidewalks in our development. And so, they promote the development industry. They serve the development industry. So they serve people like Mr. Dix and, our communities that are being developed. So we're not, super concerned about the mines. We want to be good neighbors to them. If they have some language they want to propose to us that we can include in our, notifications to our HOA and our deed restrictions, that sort of thing, we will be more than happy to do so. But maybe Mr. Dix can comment more about, his contact with the mine. But that's our position on the mine.
Okay, and I was just going to follow up if you had any proposed language or conditions, regarding the mine, if you had anything.
I think, we would need to work with staff and with the mine to do that, and we would have to provide those HOA documents as part of our application for a individual development plan where when you do the first phase, you set up your HOA, you do all that language, you do your deed restrictions, your bylaws, your covenants, you put all that together at that time. You have to provide that to the water management district to make sure that you're handling the maintenance of the stormwater management system, and that's the time that we would put all that together working with staff. But, if they have a condition they want to propose, and we'll listen. We're not against the mine. They might be against us, but we're not against them. I just want to make that clear. Okay.
No further questions?
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Shara.
Good morning. Just a couple quick ones, I hope.
Sure.
On page 99 of your presentation, you actually give a breakdown of the lot sizes, the height, and the coverage for the different types of structures that are proposed.
Okay.
What is you identified in your multifamily that the height is 45 feet. How many stories are you proposing to build for those multifamily?
That can go up to 4, but usually that limits at about 3 stories. I'm doing a project right now in a community and with a similar height requirement as 3 stories. So there are projects, we don't know the answer to that question, but I know it cannot be more than 4 stories. But most likely that sets in at about 3 stories. I think the most common development that we're seeing in these type of communities are 3 stories.
Okay. I will ask of staff later a follow-up question as to that 40-foot measurement. Where is that measured from? Is it measured from the peak, or is it measured from the roof line itself?
Usually they're measured from the ground to the eave of the roof.
Okay.
But I must say that I haven't really studied that in the code to be sure. I'm sure staff can look that up. And again, we're willing to abide by whatever the citrus code requirements are. And I think that's generally the requirement for that. So.
Okay. A couple clarifications I didn't see in the application. One, under streets and sidewalks, and you show different graphic representations, you verbally stated that there will be sidewalks. There'll be a sidewalk on each side of the street, and there will be street lights. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And that's willing to be a condition that would be in the application?
Yes.
Changes the total, complexion of the neighborhood without sidewalks and street lights, that
Agreed.
type of thing.
I agree.
Okay. The interchangeability, I think I understood the answer, but just to be clear.
Okay.
So you're saying that you could change any type of dwelling classification up to 10% of the amount you identified. So if you identified 300 units, I'm just picking
Yes,
300,
sure.
for multifamily, the maximum multifamily you could build would be 330.
That's correct.
And then you would offset that by reducing another classification by an equal amount.
That is correct. And we only have 3 classifications, the single-family detached, single-family attached, and the multifamily. But yes, one of the other 2 would have to be reduced by 30, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Facemeyer.
I had 3, but you've already addressed one, and that was the mining neighbor across the road. The other 2 questions have to do with the neighbors as well. Can you just talk, you mentioned that you talked to representatives of the Board of Education regarding the proximity to their agriculture program. And can you address that and also reinforce that there will be, I think you said a 40-foot buffer on the north end that buffers the existing residents along King B Street?
Okay, two issues. The first one in regards to the school board. So Kathy Ebow and Tara Howell are 2 planners with our office, and after our last meeting, and we weren't totally sure of what gets sent out to the board members and when. And when Mr. Dixon attended the April meeting, he wasn't fully aware. And as we all talked about at that last meeting, there wasn't really a layout that was available to you guys to see. So we felt it was important to meet with him, and he wanted to show us, I think, and I must admit I wasn't there, but I and Mrs. Howell is here today if we need to have any more discussion about this. But they met with Mr. Dixon, and he showed them why he has the concerns that he has. They have agricultural area, they have other uses that they're doing, and he wants to make sure that, people aren't right up against the school. And he certainly didn't commit to anything at that meeting, and we're not putting words in his mouth, but we learned what his concerns are. And as a result, we made a substantial change in our development and made a 75-foot buffer. And that's a very large buffer. I can't remember doing a development like this with a bigger buffer than that anywhere. And I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years and have done many, many, many designs of many communities. So I think that was a very generous offer to try to offset some of their concerns. It requires landscaping, large trees, understory trees, and shrubs. So our intent is to have a buffer there that the neighbors just don't even see what's going on in the school at all. So, so that was really our reason to reach out, was to find out what his concerns were. And he said, come by and see. We have cows. We're doing this, and so, and they have other activities that they're doing on their lands kind of towards the north. So we learned about that and we made adjustments. So that was, I think, the answer to the first question. That's all that we did. And, I'm sure, he can comment on that as well and what his feelings are now with the revised buffering. And then I think your second question was.
The northern border that
Yes,
abuts
yes.
the existing homeowners along King B Street.
Right. So, they had some legitimate concerns. And again, we have the type of buffer that's required to be planted with landscaping. Your code has distinct requirements about how many trees you have to plant along. And I went, after the meeting, as a matter of fact, I went into West King B Street and stood up there, and they said higher, and I understand. That's kind of one of the things about those rendered views that we did, is so you can kind of, see what it's looking like as you're adjacent to it. But the idea, we didn't feel like what we had before, which I think was a 10-foot buffer, was appropriate. So we did. I think we tripled it. I may have mentioned 40 feet. I think we've got 30 feet. Tara, if you could confirm that, that's what it is, 30 feet, right. So, and it is, again, a landscaping buffer that requires us to plant a variety of trees and that sort of thing in there. So we did make it big enough that we could have multiple rows and lots of vegetation in there. And it fit within our development. We had to, lose some area and some things inside, but yes, that's what we did. I mean, those are legitimate concerns, and the code requires much less than that. For the exact compatibility of that type of use and our use, your code says that we have to have a 10-foot buffer. But we listened to them and we said, let's make it bigger and let's add more landscaping, and so that's what we did, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Worthington.
you spoke about the parallel parking, but where the multifamily units are on your master plan, it looks like you have parking spaces. Will you be meeting the land development code for parking for the multifamily?
Yes, and those will most likely be your typical 90-degree or angled parking, that sort of thing. But those are private, parking lots. And yes, they have to combine and meet the parking requirements. They have to meet the space requirements, the dimensional requirements, all the transportation requirements, parking requirements. The parking comment was more to do with the right-of-ways, the roadways that would be throughout the development through the single-family detached and attached. And, in a townhome development, you got a small little driveway that feeds into your house. And so finding other places to have parking and you got these roadways, there's lots of opportunities to do parallel parking, and they're really popular, but I understood there were some concerns, but it wasn't that we were gonna replace required parking with this parallel parking. It would just be added parking for the benefit of the neighborhood, so, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Bramlett.
As an engineer, can you give us any data or any information on blasting? How far, how many feet, and what kind of blasting effects one would expect so many feet away from the blast site and things like that? Because I'll tell you why. I feel like the last time we did this, or you came in front of us, we have a few neighbors, residential neighbors, that are here with some concerns, which, that's typical, but the largest contingency of people that we're dealing with that are in opposition are the mining people. And your presentation, I'm pretty sure I read this like 2-3 different times, and I was looking for information on the blasting. So I just sort of need some more data or some information. Maybe you have it, maybe you don't, maybe the mining people can help me, but with proximity of where your residential units are and where the blasting will happen, how many feet away do you expect to have just noise and vibration, and are we worried about any cracks and settling and things like that? I know that in other areas, previously, in the beginning when I was on the PDC, we had a gentleman that moved here from like the Miramar, Miami area, and these mines were all there for 100 years, some of them. And then they built all of these residential properties and developments around them. And then the residents started complaining about the mine, but the mine was there first. So I really like this plan and I want to support, but I just need more data on the mine.
Yeah, I understand the question. I'm not a blast engineer, and I can't pretend to say that I have the expertise to know exactly where they blast and exactly what the effect will be. If it's required for us to do more research on that, we certainly can. They know their practices a lot better than we do, and we'll listen. But to think that this can't be developed with single-family residents, I mean, we can by right develop this at 4 units per acre. The only thing that they're arguing is whether or not this should be a PUD and whether or not it should be a little bit more units per acre than that. So if there was 25 people living there, they could have the same concerns. So I want to know more, and if we can find out more from them, then we will. I honestly cannot answer the question of exactly what the impact would be for the blasting on this development across the street. And if that's required for us to find out more, we'll do our best.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, I do have a couple. Can you tell me, you got 3 entrances coming off of 491. Can you tell me from your plan here, where exactly is the entrance and egress for the mining? Is it compared to your map here, to your drawing?
Let me see if I can.
Directly across, mile down?
I can't seem to advance now. I'm not sure why. Oh, there we go. So my understanding is that their entrance is down here. And this is our development here. So I do not believe there's any entrance unless it's a secondary entrance that's right across from us.
All right, my next question is, of course, people that know me, I'm a real advocate for workforce attainable housing. Mr. Dix mentioned that part of this project is going to be attainable housing. Can you give me a percentage? And is the percentage that you're going to provide me, will that be for just the multi-housing, townhouses, or is there going to be attainable housing in your single-family homes?
Yeah, I think Mr. Dix can answer that question better than I could.
Thanks, good question. So I was trying not to get caught in the weeds, right, on affordable housing, workforce housing, attainable housing, because every one of them has a different definition to everybody. We're not talking about adjustable median income, okay? It's not
Right.
bonded. When I specifically talk in generalistic terms for affordable housing, I mean specifically that it's going to be, with the density that we've requested, I know what the end use is going to be as far as what the house is going to come online. I know how much it's going to cost and how much it costs to build the house. I know how much the person's going to be able to afford based on their adjustable median income and what they can pay with current interest rates. So when I say that, if I drop the density, I'm going to increase the lot value, I don't have a choice, by $30,000 to $40,000. That's immediately going to flow up to the price of the house. So that's going to make it way less affordable for somebody that's trying to qualify, because every $100 you're going to lose 1,000 people that could even qualify for a house. So there is no AMI set-asides, there's no affordable housing set-asides. What makes it affordable is the mixed-use component, which means the multifamily, the detached, and the attached. So it gives you 3 products for somebody that wants to move into Citrus County to set up roots, bring their family, and get a job, go to work for the school or be a 911 service worker or something. They have those options, right? And that's why we plan this ahead. But there is not something that's going to come out and say, no, this is based on 80% of AMI or 60% of AMI. That's just not something that this project's designed to do. I mean, we could change it and go in there and start looking for, federal grants and state grants and so forth, but then you get other problems, right, that you got to start solving when you do that. And so I don't think that this project warrants that. I'm not opposed to looking at other projects for that need, but when we look at this, when I talk about affordability, and you'll hear me say that not just on this project but other ones, I'm trying to figure out how to get a lower priced home and then those other starting points. So somebody may move into the multifamily, and a year and a half later, 2 years later, as their kids go through the school process, they're saying, hey, let's move to a detached home or an attached home or a detached home. They can technically move into this community and live there for the next 25 years while their kids go to school close and nearby without ever having to change, but even finding a different product or home. So I apologize if I just use the term affordable housing. It's really difficult to speak into that with so many different meanings.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I do have one more question for you. On your open space, are you including the school buffers and the buffers surrounding your open space and your DRAs, the recreational areas, your sidewalk area, the media between the sidewalk and the roadway?
When I mentioned that if you take the whole project, 43% of it was open area, yes, the buffers included where the stormwater management areas were included. All of that was included, everything that's open. None of the lot area, none of the single-family detached, the multifamily, the retail, none of that was included. But the area that's either buffers, stormwater, recreation, and those type of things were all included in that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question,
It
but
does.
yes, when I was talking about the 43% of our property on the concept master plan was open area, I was including the buffers because it's natural area. It's going to be landscaped, vegetated, natural. It's going to have wildlife, that sort of thing, so,
All right, thank you.
sure.
Any other questions, Commissioners? All right, we get the staff to come forward with their presentation, please. Right now. Hey, Joe. Excuse me. We'll like to take a 10-minute recess for a minute, and then come back to start with you, because we know you're going to be long-winded today.
Okay.
So we'll be back at 5 minutes till 11.
kids stay at my house in the wintertime when it was 20 degrees out because their grandma and grandpa was living in a storage unit. Like, I understand.
90% of
Until one make, like, so for example,
Yeah.
so now they can support the agent, because the other guys are.
You can't afford anything in Florida on minimum wage. I know, I mean, listen, I have an 18-year-old who just graduated. Like, I feel for him. What are you gonna do?
Both of my grandkids, one's 19, one's 23. They're still living at home. All right, looks like we're all back. All right. Welcome back. All right, thank you. We're going to continue on with the CPA AAPUD 2023-00011 with the staff presentation. Thank you, Joe. Good morning.
All right, good morning. Joe Hockadell, Principal Planner with Land Development. This application is very similar to the one you heard previously, just a month or two ago. It is requesting to change the land use on the subject properties to the residential mixed use on the future land use map and the planned development residential on the Atlas map, with a master plan for up to 1,000 residential units, some non-residential components, and some recreational components. And so here you can see this is the existing land use that's out there right now. It's predominantly low-density residential, but it does have some general commercial and professional service and office. And so here's the updated conceptual plan, based on the last hearing we had for this. The Planning Commission recommended some additional details as to what was being proposed. And so the applicant did come back and provide us with a more detailed master plan. And while they're still requesting some deviations from the code, they have clarified that other things they intend to meet the land development code for. But as Mr. Brown stated, they do now have 3 access points to County Road 491, which you can see here. And they did provide some updated buffers. There's the 75-foot type C along the school board property to the south and the west, a 30-foot type B along the medium density residential lots to the north that are along King B Street, and they provided a 25-foot type C buffer along County Road 491. And I will say that with the non-residential component, it's kind of hard to determine what the buffer would be at this time because, as this board knows, we have different buffer requirements depending on if it's small non-residential development or large non-res. And so since we don't really know what's going there right now, we don't know exactly what buffer would be required. But for the most part, the development is as it was previously. They did make some clarifications, and they intend to meet land development code for some other things. So really the concerns with this project are the compatibility with King B, which the applicant has stated they do intend to have an increased buffer there. Obviously the active mine across the street, and the interchangeability. Mr. Brown did explain that a little bit, but staff had concerns with that. Would they be able to actually move the single-family attached and the multifamily and the single-family detached to different areas? I know that the conceptual plan, the generalized plan, has it depicted here, but staff had some concern with that interchangeability, if that would actually affect some of that as well. So I really don't intend to be long-winded with this because, like I said, predominantly it's the same as it was before with some clarifications and some modifications. The application does meet concurrency requirements, although there is that statement from utilities saying that sewer improvements will be needed. But in a general sense, generally this is compatible with the surrounding area with the suggested conditions, although there still are some of those concerns that I stated before. And we do have public input. As a matter of fact, we got one this morning you should have from the representative of the mine.
Thank you.
That's it.
Short and sweet.
That's it.
Does the applicant have any questions for staff?
No, sir.
No. Does the board have any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Worthington.
Joe, do you feel like we could get the condition worded in a way where we could have the interchangeability where it wouldn't be moving to the different areas, that we could satisfactorily word that so that it would mean specifically what they're saying, and not that they're gonna put one multifamily housing unit over where single-family attached used to be.
I think we can word that appropriately.
I've noticed lately a lot in PUDs, there's a lot of requests for signs and buffers. What's going on with this? Is it some sort of new design standard or something that maybe we're not up with the times with? Or how would you describe all of these requests for signs and buffers, or explain?
I think it is just something that the applicants are requesting. They want to have their signs as close to the roadway as possible, but the Land Development Code does have a provision that says that signage cannot be within a required landscape buffer.
Sometimes, though, it kind of looks nice, when the sign and then they have the shrubbery around, and it's designed in landscape nicely. It does look nice. No?
And I'll add just a little bit. I think what you're seeing, honestly, is you're seeing people that are not usually developing in Citrus County. You're seeing more and more of that, more of the bigger projects. Our buffers are not continuous. They're not continuous trees. They're not continuous hedges or shrubs. There are so many plantings per 100 feet, so there's always gaps. They're never I would love to have it a continuous tree line, but it's not going to be. So there is room for signage. I don't think all codes are written that way. When they hear a buffer, they think we can't put, we'll never see the sign. You probably recall Panda Express came before you and the board that did not get approved because you clearly can see the sign is already there. I think putting the signs in front of landscaping is awesome, and I think that does look pretty. I agree with you. I think there's plenty of room within our buffer 100 feet allowance to do that and still be out of the buffer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Giving that a lot of thought, sorry.
Any other questions? Commissioner Shara.
Mr. Chairman. Morning, Joe. Question on traffic. The applicant did a traffic analysis and will do a traffic analysis and, to meet the requirements. Question for you, when you looked at that, do you have an understanding of whether or not that analysis also included the anticipated traffic with the preserve further north, as well as, peak operation of the school and other activities that grow over time? One of the things we said that there's 3 entrance points onto 491. The preserve will have a number of entrance points, one of which is the county maintenance area that's a little bit further south. The school, it has a traffic light. This can get to be if this gets approved, this can be a busy area. And who is actually responsible to take a look at this in sum total? Because you can imagine all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 more traffic lights in that stretch between Saunders going up to Route 44. So how is that evaluated?
So we no longer have transportation concurrency in Citrus County. However, what I can say is that the Technical Services Division is the one that looks at access management and roadway improvements. And so any analysis that would be required for turn lanes or traffic warrants or things like that would be through technical services. So,
as a county function?
Yes. So
in compliance with state guidelines, correct?
And Citrus County guidelines. So they would look at this, they would require those details at time of platting. So when they actually came in to create the subdivision, technical services would require that information.
And as part of that evaluation, they take a look at the sum total of that stretch of road, preserve, crossings, maintenance, schools, peak hours.
Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, and I don't know exactly what they look for. So.
Okay, fair enough. Not to put you on the spot with that, sorry. The other one, and perhaps this is also a down the road. When we talk about mining activities, and we're going to hear from those folks, I imagine, this becomes very technical in terms of the actual mining operation, the type of operation, what they're using to mine with, vibrations that are set up based on the types of soil, that kind of thing, and potential down the road impacts on foundations and walls and others, and how far out does that activity create a potential issue with homes and or structures. is that part of the county evaluation as well?
I don't believe so. I'm not a mining expert, but I'm not familiar with any kind of requirement, construction-wise, that they would have to demonstrate for this development.
Okay, that's fair. So if that's not part of it, and that, I get that answer, is there a commercial approach to this related to bonding or other type of financial assurances that would be in place that if there would be, cracks or settlement or other impacts, that the homeowner has recourse other than to come back and, sue a mining company or sue the developer?
I don't think I can answer that.
The land development code does not have criteria like that. We have criteria to notice anyone within an active mine, within a half a mile of an active mine. We have that criteria, so when a building permit comes in, they have to sign acknowledgement. But as far as their construction and how to deal with the mine itself, they may have some creative ideas with the mining community, but our code does not have anything specific spelled out.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything. Thanks for that clarification. Thanks, Joe.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Do we know if we've ever had structural or complaints about, like, from the blasting, for example, for the existing buildings that we have on the west side of this road, like the school or the Ganto government complex? Have we had any issues from vibrations or anything of the mines that has been reported that anyone knows about?
Not that I know of.
Okay, I was asking, just if there's like a history of that, so thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have one for clarification, just so I understand this.
Please
By
speak
right,
in,
they
speak in the mic.
By right, they can build up to 400 units without a PD?
I believe the number is 444 units without a PUD.
I say, okay, so they can do 444 units without a PD, and they're asking for 1,000.
Correct.
So in exchange for letting them increase the density to 1,000, the county has assurances that they're going to develop within a certain PD, a planned development, and attach conditions to it.
Correct.
Okay, well,
Chuck, I'm sorry, can you please get closer?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand the difference between the bubble plan and the conceptual master plan, because I really don't think a PD should be a bubble plan. I think if they're going to commit to something, they're going to commit to it, and it should be the conceptual plan. I think that's a new thing. I don't think we used to do it that way.
And I think that was a concern that Ms. Worthington raised about the ability to change these designated areas on the conceptual plan, and I believe we can add some language to that condition to
Or maybe just
lock
have
that in.
one plan so it's clear what's being approved. And if they want to amend it, then they can come back through the process and amend it. But they can't automatically just decide they're going to make more residential on the south end of it or what have you. So it's more in exchange for that increase in density, which is roughly 60-some% increase in density, that there are some assurances of what's really going to go there. But I do appreciate the fact that they came out and met with us and looked at the property and understand what's back there, because we have very similar concerns that somebody might move in and occupy apartment buildings and be right up next to an active farming operation or a defensive driving course, which is another thing that's back there, and then complain about it after the fact. So I just want to go on record as being clear that that's what's back there and that's not going anywhere. But
Joe, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
you can go ahead.
Are they being asked to approve this particular plan rather than the bubble plan this time, right? Yes. Or at least review
The
it?
condition states that it is the master plan that was July 1st of 2024, which this is part of that.
Right, so the bubble plan that you saw before is not what you're being asked to consider today, it's this.
Okay, well, so the bubble plan won't be part of the development order.
Well, I believe the bubble plan has some information on it that is appropriate towards what they're requesting, and it kind of delineates the different areas, but this is also part of that master plan.
Why not just put it all on one plan instead of having it separate like that? Because that makes it more open for interpretation later on. And if it's not open for interpretation, people have better assurance of what's going to be there. Because it's really not a bad project. I mean, I'll say they did do a good job trying to design it with that many units. I do have concerns about the number of units being increased by that much, that close to the school and the mine. But if that's a given that that's allowed and that's where we want to go, then let's at least nail it down as to what they're really putting there, so that we don't end up with something else.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have one.
Commissioner Worthington.
Joe, why does staff not support extending the timeline for this development? I know that, I mean, we have several developments that have extended PUDs. I was just curious, what would be the unintended consequences for that, if you had some idea why you don't support it?
I apologize, I don't know why that would be in there, that staff wouldn't support the extended time frame for it.
You said you wouldn't support 20, so they came back with 10. You support 10, but not 20.
20 is a long time, but 10 is, we've been seeing 10 pretty recently with some of these larger developments, because, you know, we're aware that it takes time to be able to go through all the steps they need to do and to actually get this started and you know, created. So.
And just to clarify, that doesn't mean that the buildings all have to be built in 10 years. That means they have to have development orders, so platting. If they've created the lots, the clock has stopped. I don't see that in the conditions of the 10-year. I think I might have missed that.
Yeah, I apologize.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else? Commissioner Facemeyer?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, thank you, Joe. All right, this time the public portion of the meeting will be now open.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one comment on staff's presentation because of some questions that came up?
This is not that.
This is really not that time for that.
Oh, okay. All right. Will there be a time for us to? I just wanted to clarify.
I did ask you a
couple of
minute
things
ago if you had any questions for staff.
at that point, but
that
staff
point.
continued answering more questions at that point, and so more issues came up that I wanted to clarify, that's all. At that time, we didn't have any, but then there was a couple of questions about the
If
buffer and the master plan.
you may proceed, but only referring to what was changed that you
Okay.
discussed.
Just two things. I believe it was Commissioner Worthington asked about the signage, and the staff gave an answer on that, and I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that, is that we agree with staff that, you know, there is gaps in the buffer where a sign could be placed, but the condition is that we can't put the sign in there, even if there is gaps. So what we were saying is that we would be able to put the sign in that 25-foot buffer that's adjacent to Lecanto Highway, and that we wouldn't interrupt the landscaping. Exactly what she was saying, but currently we can't do that because the condition is that staff did not support our request because the code says that you cannot put the sign in the buffer. The buffer is that 25-foot area. And so we couldn't put the sign in there, even if there was a gap like Joanna mentioned. So that's the reason why we requested that, is that we could put it in there, but that we would have to work with staff to make sure that we weren't interrupting the landscaping, that we were continuing the landscaping. So I just wanted to clarify that. I think her response made it appear like we could fit the sign in the gap, and we can't per the code if we're not allowed to do that. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then the second thing was Mr. Dixon's comment about can we make the concept master plan part of the application, and it is provided as part of the application. There's a regulatory requirement to do a PUD master plan. And just, again, when you look at the PUD master plan, it specifically says where single family can be. So we can't move the multifamily into the single family area because of the Like, this plan doesn't do that. This is, so we do this plan, and then we create the area that single family can be based on the plan. And so the reason why we have that plan is because we still have to go through a lot of design work, right? We have to do full design of stormwater management systems. We have to design roadways. We have to design the townhomes, and the townhome person might come in and want a slightly different size than we have there, which would shift a road here and there. And so, I mean, we still have to build the multifamily where the multifamily is. We have to build the single family attached where the single family is. We're not asking to move anything. We're just saying if that unit right there that's orange, those orange units in the multifamily, if they happen to have 2 units more per building than, we're anticipating, it would still be in that same location because the PUD master plan requires that it be in that location. So we're not asking to move things around, but what happens, most jurisdictions are telling us to make the PUD master plan not so specific because it causes so many problems. Every time you turn around and you're doing design, you have to come back and say, can we get an exception for this? Can we do this? Can we do this? Because everything changes. So they want to make sure that the master plan requires the most important things, but it does leave some flexibility for design because, there will be issues. The roadway layout may change completely. We may change lot sizes, make them bigger, that sort of thing. So that's the reason why you don't put a plan of this level of detail as your PUD master plan. You put all the controls in with your master plan. We're providing this so that you can see that we don't just make these bubble plans for no reason. And also, there's lots of topography on this side, so the reason why the multifamily is there is because of the way the topography lays out, and that's the flattest area in that part of the site. Those type of things. So we're not asking to move things around. And the PUD master plan takes care of that. It doesn't allow us to do that. It has allowable uses that are allowed in those areas, in the single family attached, the single family detached, and the multifamily. But I would warn you, to make this your regulatory plan is going to give staff a lot of problems and us as petitioners a lot of problems during that design process, because it's called a concept master plan because that's what it is. We haven't done roadway designs. We haven't done all the improvements, and it could be a different looking building than that along the retail. Could be 1 building instead of 2, those type of things. So we've done this enough that this is substantially what's going to be, and that's what we want to present it to you. But to make that the regulatory plan is very difficult, and it becomes a real issue down the road. So that's the reason why and the reason why we're showing it to you, because we want to be transparent about what we're wanting to do. We didn't want you to just see a bubble plan and not know what the real plan is. And where is that happy median, and how do you make that work? We'll work with staff, and we understand your concern. It's legitimate. I get your point, but the PUD master plan does have those controls in place to prevent what I think you're concerned about of, moving multifamily into single family and just changing the whole thing around. We cannot do that. But I just wanted to clarify that. But that is the reason. We have many jurisdictions that we work with. They say we're giving them too much detail in our master plans because they don't want the headaches of, having to do these revisions all the time. So that's kind of the issue there. But.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'm sure that Commissioner Dixon would love to debate this issue with the engineer, but this isn't the time for that.
Okay.
Correct. I was not going to allow that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this time the public portion of the meeting will now be open.
Without speaking to that specific project, I think that if you're increasing something by 60%, that it ought to be more specific as opposed to a lesser percentage. It could be less specific.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Thank you. The public portion of the meeting will now be open. If there's anyone present who would like to speak on this application, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes. Organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any documentation that you would like to be entered into record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. First speaker.
Good morning. John O'Connor, 3835 West King B Street. I have concerns because this kind of was brought up during the preserve part of the meeting, not specifically, but if you put this many people into this area, as that plan, you're looking at 2,500 to 3,000 people you need to get out of there in emergency, say as a hurricane. In this particular plan, you came back with the preserve and said they should put a road back to Homosassa Trail. That would allow emergency vehicles in and allow a lot more people towards the back section of this, or as we're looking at this plan would be the north side, another way out of there. Instead of trying to get 2,500 or 3,000 people out on 491 because you immediately make a right, there's a traffic light. Once the preserve gets under construction, you make a left, you're gonna have another traffic light within a quarter mile. Nobody can move and get in and out of there unless sitting through the light cycles. I just kind of want to point that out. And Mr. Dix, thank you for making some adjustments for the West King B buffer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, I'm Cheryl Howard, 3444 West King B. I want to say that I do agree with Mr. Dixon about the plan not being finalized. My concern is if you look at the retention ponds they have on there, the second one from the right, that's me right on the other side. And I do appreciate you adding that. It makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about my water drainage problems. But who's to say it's actually going to be there? This can change at any time. I understand they can't change what housing types in different sections, but who's to say that's not going to change? Is that going to be there? So that's a concern of mine. Then I go into the traffic. It's been talked about a bunch. My concern is more of the school traffic specifically. From King B to the schools, I have 3 kids, one at each of those schools. It takes me 20 minutes to get from King B to drop my children off. If you add in thousands of more residents and how many more children along with that, I have 3 kids. What is it, 2.5 is the average per family? We're talking many, many, many. I don't even know if the schools can hold that many more children. Right now, I think they're at capacity. So that's another concern, that traffic to get those in. If the community, the children that live in that community, I'm guessing it's less than 2 miles. So are they gonna have to drive their children? So that's thousands of cars added to that. Or is there gonna be school buses taking them? So now we're gonna have school bus stops along that added to that traffic. I just feel like that's a huge impact that is not quite necessary. And then you have the preserve on the other side that's gonna have, there are thousands of children that are gonna be coming to the community or to the same schools and same traffic trying to get their kids to school every day. I'm still concerned about the children having their animals at the farm at the school. Are they gonna be safe? My animals are right on the north side. Are my animals gonna be safe? Are we gonna have people complaining even though we're allowed to have them? Are they gonna get mad and then shoot my animals in the middle of the night? Like, it's happened in many areas. Who's to say it's not gonna happen here? So I fear for the safety of my animals at the school, my animals and of the animals at the school. Whew, sorry. What else? I didn't hear anybody mention the cemetery that's still in the middle of that property. It was brought up last time in April, and I don't know if there was a plan that was set and determined for that, but I didn't hear anybody mention that. And there's still a bunch of bald eagles' nests that are active on all that property, and that wasn't mentioned either for the protection of them. I guess that's about all that I have. So thank you for your
All
time.
right, thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Janice Murphy. I'm a resident of Inverness. My main concern is the intensity of this and the density. I know that you all are interested in affordable housing. However, there are other ways to get housing affordable, like decrease the cost of the finishes. We don't have to keep upzoning. We don't want this to become Wesley Chapel. I just ask that you stop upzoning and letting all these residents, because people want to move here, doesn't mean we have to let them move here. Build decent houses on decent sized lots. A quarter acre is plenty, but 5, 6 houses per acre, we're going to end up like Wesley Chapel. It's sad. I moved here because I liked this rural feel. I came from places. I came from Lake Mary. It's hell. It's absolute hell. Drive up in Lake Mary and see what the traffic's like. I'm just asking, please, just stop upzoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name's Lori Corbin. I live at 1962 South Connie Point. And I have large animals. And I also have that concern about my animals staying safe. I have bulls, I have heifers, and I have calves. I also have chickens. I have all that going on in my house, and I also take care of my elderly mother by myself. So I also have a very hard time seeing how all this traffic and everything's going to be taken care of. I also have another concern. If you're going to put all these thousands of people into this one little community and also across the street of 44, another house subdivision that's upscaling it, how is the sewage going to be handled? In other words, are we all going to have to get away from having septic tanks and go to the actual pipeline and pay those taxes as well? I have a lot of concerns in a lot of different areas. In the mining situation, to be honest, my home does feel it when it has that. But at the same time, I agreed to live there with that. So I have minor fixes at times, as well as keeping those animals under control, if that makes sense. So that's all I have to say, because they took all of mine. And I really don't like the 6 houses or 5.7 houses per acre. That is ridiculous. It is too much upscaling. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi there, Philip Elledge from Homosassa. I'm a local realtor as well as a small business owner. I just came because I was interested in knowing more about what was going to happen out in that area. The way I look at it is the land has already been zoned LDR. So that is a maximum of 2 dwellings per acre without any PUD, up to 6 units per acre with a PUD. So the developer's asking for a PUD, going through the steps, clearly designing a nice looking neighborhood that's going to bring more nice houses to our area. It's going to be planned service area. It all looks like a really nice development, well thought out. The mine is something that's interesting to me. I was in explosives in the military, so I understand shockwaves and stuff like that. But if a mine was interested in these separate parcels and worried about their effect on those parcels, they were for sale. Back in 2021, the 2 large chunks of it, those were on market for 91 days. If the mine was really that concerned about it, they could have bought those parcels. The other parcel, that's smaller, it's probably in that northeastern corner, that was on market for 185 days. So there was opportunity for the mine to take over that property and not leave it open for a developer to purchase it and have a plan that is meeting our county codes and meeting the requirements. So I think this should go forward.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rob Batzel, 1531 Southeast 36th Avenue, Ocala, Florida, 34471. I too will not repeat, and I'm under a tight time requirement, but I'm here today on behalf of Crystal River Quarries, the mine that we've been referencing. I'm also joined by a few individuals who I need to introduce. Mr. Dixie Hollins, who needs no introduction, but who, interestingly and relevant to today, served on the committee that created our comp plan. Of course, Timothy Riley, who's been referenced and whose letter is in front of you from Gunster, is an environmental law attorney and land use lawyer with extensive history in mining, and he's going to speak to you, as well as Ed Morawski and Jeff Straw, who are both experts in the field. And then finally, of course, Frank Kolitz, my client, is here today. I'm speaking quickly because I'm under a tight time requirement, only about 4 minutes left. So let me get right to it. At a high level, the good news is Citrus County saw this day coming a long time ago in developing its comprehensive plan, and then in 2008, buttressing that comprehensive plan with a land development code that meets the plan. They foresaw the need to protect a vital and important industry, and that is our mines, our pre-existing mines, that provide resources that are necessary for the county to continue to thrive with the growth that we all know to be here and coming. And this is a very, very nice project. They've done a nice job engineering this plan, and I give them credit for that. It is in the wrong location, with all due respect. This commission's role and job is to examine any proposal before it for consistency with the comprehensive plan and compatibility with adjacent properties, as you know. In terms of consistency with the plan, I don't have time to read you the relevant sections, but I will tell you that the plan, both, as you know, generally speaks to ensuring that residential uses are not, do not cause land use conflict with more intense uses such as industrial uses, specifically mines, commercial uses, and so on. We address that a number of ways, but very specifically, our comprehensive plan has created the extractive district and has further provided for spatial separation between those uses and uses that produce things like noise, vibration, dust, glare, odor, traffic, or other problems that aren't problems themselves. They are part and parcel of the proper operation of a mine. They just don't belong adjacent to a dense residential subdivision. That's all.
Rob,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I do not have a letter on file with all of these people's names on it to speak for the 5 minutes.
So these are individuals, let me, if I could, we have not intervened. We intend to intervene. We didn't intervene timely, so that's why I'm speaking like the Micro Machines man. We are going to each speak individually, each of these. 3 minutes? So I represent Crystal River Quarries. Mr. Riley represents the Citrus County Mining Association, and otherwise we are speaking as individuals.
I think the issue is there's no letter on file, so maybe they can write one up real quick.
Yeah, without a letter, I cannot let you proceed past the 3 minutes.
I have a speaker card that says my name on behalf of Crystal River Quarries, Inc. Does that suffice?
3 minutes.
Okay.
You got to have a letter on file, so maybe one of them can write a letter.
Okay.
Mr. Collins, Mr. Holland.
You got 1 minute left.
For the, okay. All right, so the comp plan and land development code specifically calls out allowing the economic recovery of mineral resources while protecting citizens and residential owners from adverse effects. The code continues to go into more detail on that front. In addition, what we have here, and I'm going to jump to an entirely different issue than noise and vibration. Those are inherent, and we will have others speak to that. The traffic issue is a concern. We do not have concurrency in this county, and with the board's, if the board will grant me grace, I would request a few more minutes to speak on this issue. All you have in your packet is a traffic memorandum. That is not a transportation impact analysis. That is not a traffic study. Essentially, all that you've been told is that 11,200 and some odd vehicles will be entering 491 on a daily basis, and that you have potentially 3 connections that look to be much closer to one another than the 440 feet required by the code. You have no assurances, well, you have no understanding of the impacts that will have on these segments of road or the intersections, or what mitigation may be required. May I be granted a few extra minutes while I get a letter confirming that I in fact represent the man
If you get a
standing
letter
behind
and
me?
bring it up, you get 2 additional minutes.
Well, how many minutes has he, did
That's
you
3.
initially give him 3?
Well, we had 2 minutes and 3 seconds when it got intervened, so I gave him an additional minute. Now we have a letter. Do I got the cue for
Yes,
2 more minutes? It's just a policy. Don't take it personal. We have to treat everyone fairly.
Understand, yes, sir. All right, so I'm going to slow down a bit, take a breath. What you have here, and Commissioner Shara, you asked a good question. In the absence of concurrency, an applicant makes a decision about how thorough their application packet is going to be when they submit it to you. And because part of your job here, right, is to try to determine whether the proposal is so intense that it may cause a safety issue in the way of a traffic problem. In the absence of concurrency, there's not a rule that says you must do this or that. And in fact, the applicant's correct. They're not required to have a traffic study until a later stage in the process. But the decision you make today does in fact constitute a development order that lets them move forward. And we don't know yet enough information, in my opinion, to vote yes on that, to recommend approval. I represent a lot of applicants with large projects, some of which are in Citrus County. And if I'm before you, I've had a conversation early on with my client that we are going to need a full-blown traffic study. A traffic study includes, first, a transportation impact analysis that calculates how many trips we're going to produce and an analysis of the right-of-way and intersections that we're going to affect. It then calculates how we're going to affect them and says what we need to do as an applicant to mitigate impacts. That might be turn lanes, that might be signals, that might be a host of things that are right-of-way improvements. And then we can also file a development agreement that runs tandem with our PUD rezoning that assures the county that we, the applicant, are obligated to construct what we need to do to make sure we don't adversely impact the roadways. That has not been done. We have a lot of cement trucks and trucks with material that pull out every single day across the street, in addition to the school and the existing background traffic that leaves this road at an almost failing level of service D. So with all that said, I encourage you to listen to the folks who know more about mining than me. I will stop unless you have any questions that I can answer.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Before the clock starts, my name is Dixie Hollins. I'm the president of the Citrus County Mining Association. I have a question for the record. Am I allowed to speak 5 minutes? And the council that we've hired, is he allowed to speak separately 5 minutes or 3 minutes?
I only have Dixie Holland for a letter on file, and now Rob Batzel.
So you do have 5 minutes, Mr.
I
Hollins.
have a letter on the back of my form authorizing me to speak on behalf of the association.
5 minutes,
As long as
sir.
whoever signed that letter has authority to sign it on behalf of the organization.
Yes.
If that was Mr. Hollins, maybe he should tell you what role he is in the organization.
I'm the president of the Citrus County Mining Association.
So if the president signed it, sounds like they get 5 minutes.
You got 5 minutes, Mr. Hollins.
Thank you very much. I'd like to also request, if I take 2 minutes now, can I take another 3 minutes at the end of this presentation?
No split time, sir. 5
No
minutes.
split time.
5 minutes.
Do it now or don't ever do it again. Okay, my name is Dixie Hollins, and I'm the president of Citrus County Mining Association, and I came before you all back in April. And our concern, my biggest concern, is whatever happens today and with the county commission, is that setting a precedence of continuing development across the street from active mining operations that are here in Citrus County. I have an active mining operation up in the northwest part of Citrus County. Mr. Colas has one. He's been here a long, long time. There's 400 units per acre over here now, 400 units allowed now, and now we're doubling that, or more than doubling that. My concern is the Mining Association and the Mining Ordinance work very hard to protect the compatibility of development across the street from active mining operations. When developments come forward here, it activates these mining operations more. More roads, more materials sold. More concrete, more sidewalks, more materials sold. It's a catch-22. My concern is Mr. Dix has done a great job in this development. Hats off to him. But there's a right place and a right time to put these developments next to the mining operation. This mining operation that's here will be here a long time. They've been here a long time. We need to respect the economic driver of these mining operations here in Citrus County. Without them, the building expenses and the road expenses would be quadruple just getting the material up here by the truck traffic alone. My other concern is that there is some rules in the county about a notice to homeowners. And I would like to make sure that that language is in there, and that language also follows not just the deed or the guy built or the building department, but it goes with the title. So if you buy the lot and you buy the house, and you got it subject to the county, I'm probably not saying it right, that when you sell it, it goes with your title. That you know that if you read your title and you sign your title, you're responsible for what's signature. That you know that you're moving into an active mining operation. Because we all stay under the threshold, I can assure you that. But the more people move in, as you all have said today, the more problems we have with people complaining. Truck, traffic, noise, vibration, backup horns. We're all under the compliance of the fire marshal, the state, the Corps, the DEP. But the more people moving around, you all seen it, more people moving around airports, we've got a problem with airplanes making noise. And it's just a revolving issue. We are concerned that, as I mentioned, set in the precedents here, we're also concerned that down the road, what's going to happen when all these people start moving in and they all start going to the county commission and start complaining. We've all been down that road before, and we saw development here of the same type right next to it almost, and we wrote a letter to the effect that we were not against development, but against the increase in the density. That's our concern. We certainly appreciate your time today. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And I'm sorry I can't give my minute and 7 seconds away to somebody. I'll be glad to sell it. I'm just kidding. Thank you all very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr.
God
Hollis.
bless. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Riley. I'm attorney with the Gunster Law Firm, and I represent the association at 215 South Monroe Street, Tallahassee, Florida. The association has worked tirelessly to advocate for responsible resource development in Citrus County. Solid mineral mining is a cornerstone of Citrus County. The County Commission has recognized in the Code of Ordinances that the severance and processing and treatment and transportation of solid minerals by mining is an established and important factor in the economy. The comprehensive plan, specifically Objective 17.13, says that the county will allow the economic recovery of mineral resources while protecting its citizens and the environment from adverse impacts. This means that the county has a duty to not only protect existing mining operations, but anticipate and prevent surrounding development that could be incompatible with the unique and critically important land use. And you've heard from the colleagues before me that that's the issue here. Great project, wrong location. Increases, substantially upzones the density directly across from an active mine and active concrete batch plant operation. And that creates intentional conflicts. That's the incompatibility that needs to be factored as part of the comprehensive plan review. There's a number of concerns that we have with it. Most importantly, I think, as my colleague, Mr. Bastille, said, is the lack of information at this point to make an informed decision on the compatibility and the demands it will place on resources. But this development at this level of density in this proximity to an active mining operation is incompatible with the existing uses. There's noise and vibration concerns. Mining activities generate significant levels of noise and ground vibration, which, while complying with county, state, and federal standards, could still be disruptive to residents of a high-density residential area when living within only 100 feet, a few hundred feet of an active mine. And we have some experts that could talk a little more detail about that. And we also have significant safety concerns. You have heavy truck traffic and transportation of materials are routine in mining operations. Introducing residential commercial traffic into the environment raises serious safety concerns due to potential for accidents. You're asking for 3 new curb cuts literally within 1,000 feet of the only access point to a mine. That's putting a lot of minivans and cement trucks in close proximity to each other right beside an active school zone. We also have risk for sprawl. This project essentially creates an island of high-density residential development, adding thousands of new residents to this very specific small area without proper access to secondary, tertiary support services. This will entice pressure for additional growth to accommodate the need for thousands of new residents that would be living at the crossing. We have concern about that in terms of the capability of 491, and then the potential for increased accidents with the industrial activity and truck traffic associated with the mine. We're concerned about traffic and mobility conflicts specifically. Increasing the population density would result in the proposed development would inevitably lead to significant rise in traffic volume. There's some information that's been provided by the applicant as to sort of a preliminary traffic study, but it's not complete and non-detailed. And from just a preliminary review, it indicates that this one development alone could potentially consume the available level of service on 491, not to account for whatever else has to come before or after, and also not taking into account the additional traffic you would have associated with an active school zone right in the proximity of the project. So we're concerned about congestion. We're concerned about the infrastructure overload, and we're concerned about what happens if this project goes through, what happens after this project goes through. I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Commissioners, staff. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Ed Morosky. My address is 1907 North US Highway 301, Tampa 33619. I am a program manager with science and engineering firm Kleinfelder. I have over 24 years of experience assessing and permitting mines throughout Florida. I have reviewed this mine to determine if they have all of their state authorizations and if they are in compliance with those permits. The operation has several permits. They have an environmental resource permit issued by Florida DEP. They have a water use permit issued by Southwest Florida Water Management District, and they have an exemption from industrial wastewater permitting from DEP. I have a few key things I want to point out about those permits to demonstrate that they are in compliance with all of those permits. So the ERP permit, it was issued in 2008, and it specifically states that the operation has been in place since 1965. It states that blasting is required to extract this resource. It requires stormwater management and is required to control and manage up to the 100-year 24-hour storm event by use of a perimeter berm and controlling all that water to the mine pit, so no off-site discharge occurs. It requires a 200-foot setback, and I have viewed aerial imagery, and I traversed the entire County Road 491. That setback is in place. It is almost entirely vegetated by trees and shrubs, and based on the topography, and I'm sure all of you have seen this, you cannot see any part of that operation from County Road 491. The mine, the ERP permit requires reclamation of the entire site when they are done, so it's placed back into a suitable use for future use. It requires erosion control. It has specific wetland setbacks, notification requirements. It has annual reporting requirements. And that ERP permit authorizes FDEP to do annual inspections, and they issue reports based on that inspection. I've reviewed those inspection reports, and for the last several years, all those reports demonstrate that the DEP believes the operation is in compliance with those permits. So basically, based on my review and DEP's opinion, this mine is operating in compliance with all state authorizations. So I'm available for any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Jeffrey Straw, offices at 6900 Southwest 21st Court, Davie, Florida. We're vibration and acoustic consultants, seismologists. For the past 46 years, I've measured ground vibration evaluations of blasting and conducted those for the last 44 years here in Florida. I also hold a user of explosives license in the state of Florida. And we also act as the independent seismologist for Crystal River quarries under the state of Florida regulations. The Crystal River Quarries Lecanto mine uses blasting, as you heard before. It's the only means of extraction of the rock. We currently measure blasting vibration at multiple locations around the quarry, two of which happen to be at the existing homes or adjacent to the existing homes that are part of the subject property for this zoning. The levels are within the state of Florida criteria. There is established criteria under Chapter 55230 Florida statutes. We measure to that, but we also know that the ground vibration levels are certainly perceptible. They're perceptible here,
at this building, we monitor here, we monitor at the consultant's office and a number of other areas around. All of the levels will be measured throughout this proposed development, and the likelihood is with 1,000 residential units, there's a significant potential for complaints. We expect it. My 46 years tells me it's going to happen. It's going to go to the state fire marshal, and it's going to eventually come to the county. Crystal River Quarries uses all the potential best practices that they can for use of explosives, delivery explosives, blasting, attempting to reduce ground vibration. We orient blasting, we've done timing of the individual blasts, but zero perception is not the standard, and it will not be achieved. There will be ground vibration that will pass through this community. And the fact that this community, where we are monitoring now in this proposed development, you're going to come to an area that's much closer. You're going to have residences within approximately 500 feet of the actual blast site. It's behind the berm. You won't see it. It doesn't have a potential for damage to structures, but it's certainly going to be felt. Because of that, the levels that we currently have will increase. We're measuring at structures at a closer location. That puts Crystal River Quarries in a position where if the levels get too high for safety factors, they reduce ground vibration. The way you reduce ground vibration is reducing the amount of material in the blast hole or by reducing the number of holes in the blast. Currently, they're blasting about once per month. That's the rough average. This would increase that perhaps double. So you would have 2 blasting events per month. So instead of having one opportunity to complain, you have 2 from all of these people that would be in there. Overall, the increase in the number of residents, I think, is a complaint problem. The proposal to notice people will not work. Miami-Dade County tried it many years ago. They had a requirement to notice anybody within 2 miles of an active mining operation. It was done in the early stages. The people that actually signed on the dotted line didn't even know it existed. It was part of the paperwork. Even if, as Mr. Hollins indicated, that you put it as part of the title, I know that I bought a house 2 years ago because I relocated. There's that much stack of paper. I did not read every line in there, and if it's in there that says something you're next to a mining operation, most people won't notice it. They won't realize it, and then they've gotten it right. In my opinion, as a professional of this industry, and I have worked the entire state of Florida and still work there, this is not the best location for this, and you're creating a potential for complaints. And certainly, if you have questions, I'll certainly try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Frank Kolitz, president of Crystal River Quarries. We have 3 active mines in Citrus County. I won't get into the details. I was involved primarily in the development of the zoning in the county. Ms. Lynn can tell you what we've gone through with not only zoning changes, but with the mine ordinance. And one of the factors is that mines and developments, or mines in residential districts, are not compatible. So in the zoning, when things went through, they made general commercial, maybe industrial, and as it got farther from the mine was the residential districts. This development here does away with 400 foot of general commercial and puts residential right on the property line. So it actually brings this development on the north side 400 foot closer. I am not against the project, it's just the location. We have traffic problems out there now. We have trucks that are waiting in line. We have considerable accidents. And maybe Mr. Dixon can tell you school's going to start in a couple weeks. First weeks of school is terrible with traffic. So there's not much I can say, but it's not compatible with the mining. And if we have to notify people that there's a mine there and they do blasting and stuff, maybe our conclusion, it's not appropriate, it's not supposed to be there. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. We have consultants here that I brought in if you have any questions on the mining. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. Next speaker.
Janet Barrick, Citrus County resident, Citrus Springs, is where my home is.
Janet, can you pull the mic down?
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, now that's better.
Yes, much better.
Okay. Now, I've been sitting here and I've been listening and I've been reading and I've been doing a lot of due diligence, as they call it, looking things up and checking things out. There are going to be a lot more cars. We have a lot of buses on 491 with schools. You put in those houses, you're going to also have garbage trucks. You're going to have an influx of things that we don't need, and a safety issue that we have, which the sheriff is going to say he needs more policemen. We're going to need more firemen. You put in 1,000 houses. We're going to need a lot of infrastructure done and made prior to any of this. It's not a bad plan. I mean, those pictures were gorgeous. I'd love to live in a community like that. I live in Citrus Springs. We have 3 houses per acre, or 4, depending on where you're at, because ours are either .23 or .33 in size. That's a nice size. I took a ride, and I know you guys probably can't see it. I took a ride through Twisted Oaks, or where the golf course is, where the new ones are going in. There's 6 per acre. And I'll let you have the pictures later, but you could stick your hand out, they could stick their hand out, and guess what? You're almost touching fingers. Okay, how big are the houses gonna actually be? You're talking about families. When I looked at the conceptual things, they had 18, let's see, that's on my other page. Okay. They said that they were gonna do 48 of the multi-unit ones, you know, with a garage and a garage and a garage, they're all attached. We used to call them duplexes and triplexes and quads, okay? They said they're gonna have 13 in the conceptual apartment buildings. Well, 13 would actually be 3 over, because to get 300, we'd have to have odd number of people living in them. Same with the 48 multi, so their conceptual on the map is already showing that they're taking their 10% and adding it to what, you know, we're looking at. I don't think they're a bad project. However, I think this is the type of project the Board of County Commissioners wanted on Cardinal. The multi-use with a little bit of commercial. And when I was here 2 weeks ago, they took away the commercial. This would be perfect for Cardinal type thing, except it doesn't have the city water and city sewer yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Next speaker. All right. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting down. Does the applicant have any rebuttal on the public input? Do you have any rebuttal on the public input?
I do, yes, sir. Wow. That's my first comment. Let's start with the mine. Lot more smarter people than me. I don't know anything about blasting. I blew a lot of stuff up in the Marine Corps, but that's the gravity of that extension. From my understanding, which is very limited, and there's way more smarter people in here that can understand, the bottom line for the mine, right? Bluff, bottom line up front, good military term. They have no problem with anything that they said, anything, if it's 440 units. The only problem with everything that they said is if there's more than 440. They don't care about cracks, tracks, complaints, startle factor, nothing. it's only if there's more than 440 units, which is beyond belief. I don't even understand that argument to begin with. Either you're concerned or you're not concerned. You're not concerned because there's 400 units, but you're concerned because there's 800 or 900 or whatever number over 440. They have a responsibility under FDEP and the state fire marshal to do what they're doing. There was a question about, some more detail about their blasting, and do we have that? No, I don't have that information because FDEP and the state fire marshal mandates that they do it. They had a professional stand up here and tell us how compliant they are, right? That's great. I mean, I should have hired them. They're super compliant, which means I don't need to worry about what they're doing because they're compliant. I believe that they've got to be 1,640 feet from a residential, a residence to be doing what they're doing. Okay, and they can speak into that. He said 1,500, I think it's 1,640. He's the professional. I'm not sure about that. But, just because I have a residence now that's 1,650 feet away from them, that's my problem, right? They don't even want to notify anybody. They're talking about, they're having to notify more people. They should notify every single person they have to notify, and they have a state requirement to do so if they're going to do what they're going to do. Nobody's saying they can't blast or whatever. They don't like complaints. Who in the room likes complaints? I said it last time. I don't like complaints. I sure get a lot of them. But that, you do what you can to mitigate it. I came here the last time, right, and I listened to everybody's input. Some of it was good. I took some of it personal, but I left. I went and I did the best I could to kind of resolve all of that. That's what they can do instead of hiring, a handful of attorneys coming up here and talking about how they're concerned of anything over 400 units. I think we've tried to communicate with them multiple times. We have communicated with them. I think I have a good relationship. I mean, they're highly successful. I've known Mr. Dixie since I was 14 years old. They keep hearing wrong place, right time. For them, the time is never. Okay? But they're not going to hire all these attorneys and come up here and they're going to stand in front of you for anything else, right? Upsizing or whatever. They may write a letter. I bet they didn't bring a bunch of attorneys for the last one that got approved because they make all their money from our developments. So it's just inconvenient for them because they don't want those complaints. Nobody wants them. I mean, I did a little bit of minor research. I reached out to about 7 or 8 mines in the state. They're the only mining group that uses direct mail to notify people. And even then, I would be surprised that if the residents are in here right now said they actually got a piece of mail from them that they're about to blast. I read on their website they do community outreach. I'm not sure how many times the residents in here have actually been to a community outreach event. Most of the other mines, they send out emails and texts to let people know. They've got a 24 to 48 hour time frame to notify people. They need to do their job. That's where their job is. Whether it's 10 people or 800 people, that is the job. They're going to be here for a long time, like they said. How many people get mail at their mailbox? They pick it up, put it on the counter. Do you read it right away? 3 days later, your house is shaking. There's the startle factor because you haven't even read the mail. So they may need to look at the times and start notifying people that this is going to happen, and that'll resolve some of those complaints. As far as letting people know there's a mine across the street, we've already volunteered. Send your information. I heard somebody ask that. Send us what you want us to put in. We're happy to consider that. I'm definitely going to send it to an attorney. They got so many over here, I need to send whatever they want. But I'll put it in whatever requires. And then there was a question about the houses, right? So these are all new homes, right? In the state of Florida, I believe the requirement now is a 7-year home warranty on structural and so forth. If the house starts cracking and there's problems, they actually can go through the state. The national developers, the builders they do have bonds. They have to put those up. I believe it's maybe 2% or something, specifically for structural issues. Even if they're caused by the neighbor that's not compliant or not doing what they're supposed to do or not monitoring or whatever they're doing. So that'll answer that one question. And then to segue, listen, the mine thing, we want to be good neighbors. All they got to do is tell us what they want, which they haven't done. We're happy to try and address that. There was a question about the plan. Being a bubble plan or this particular concept plan. I don't like bubble plans. I hate them. There should have never been a bubble plan submitted the last time we were here. We already had the site plan. I guess we missed the drop date or whatever. But everybody needs to understand that, they keep saying, well, we don't have all the information. We need to know more. That's convenient for them because they just want to kick the can down the road. You know, we don't want to take any more time. I mean, this process takes 2 to 3 years just to get to a point where we can actually do anything. This site plan right here, you know, if you look at a bubble plan, the bubble plan does exactly what our engineer said. We can't change one thing from another. To get to the next level, it's called layers. This particular plan here has got multiple layers, geos, wetland delineations, and all these things to tell us what we can and can't do. And then it continues to go through the process. A TIA, a traffic impact analysis. I can't even do that till it's actually, the construction plans are pretty much laid out and we know exactly how everything's gonna to come out. No developer is gonna do all of that information just to get their entitlements changed. It costs $300,000, $400,000 just to get to the next level of this, and you're not gonna go out and spend $300,000 or $400,000 just to say, I just need to get through PDC, let me see if I'm gonna get my approvals and we're good. No, and then after PDC, before I can even get to actually doing something, right, to get through the BOCC and stuff, I'm gonna spend $1.2 million probably just to get to the part to pull the permits. And if anything along the way of traffic, or I can't do this, or DOT or county standards, they're gonna say, wait, stop, you can't do it. You know, there are no traffic cuts. It's suicide lane down the middle of 491, but we're gonna have to make adjustments for the utilities, for the upsizing of the lines, for the traffic, but that doesn't come today. And no developer is gonna spend $1.5 million just to get entitlements so that they can then start on the project. It's not gonna happen. But that's why we come here, because you guys bring up really great information that we may have missed. You're kind of a mix between what the staff and what the developer and what the community needs. And this is what you get, is a well thought out plan. And there were some questions about, do some of these things move? For us, nothing moves except for micro movements. The retention ponds, they're already studied based on geos, right? We know where the low spots are on the property. Those ponds aren't moving anywhere. That's where the water is gonna go. So I don't want you to take anything that I say like just frustration, maybe passion. I love what I do. I wanna leave a lasting impression on the community I'm in. You know, we specifically hear about constantly people saying, you need bigger lots, 1 per acre, 2 per acre, whatever. The reason that people are living in these smaller homes that are so close together, because that's the only place their family can afford to live. They don't have the luxury of going to buy a house and, you know, living on 1 acre. That'd be great, or 2 or 3 per acre. They don't have that. It's either this or they live in their car. And when I say affordable housing, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not doing bondable, but I'm trying to bring a product that has that density so that we can bring an affordable product to the market so people can live in it. We don't create the demand. Never do. And so I'm not going to waste any of your time. I appreciate it. I'm a little passionate about what I do. I don't just appreciate your time. I respect it, right? Because I got to sit here too. And I respect everybody that has an opinion that comes up, the mine and everybody else. We just want to be good neighbors. So I appreciate you to consider passing this. Jay, you have anything to add? Quickly?
Very minor.
Okay.
I just want to say that the mine gave us a lot of great information. Thank you, because I learned a little bit today. 2 things stuck out to me. The expert, I think it was Mr. Straw from Davie, indicated that there is no potential damage to structures. I think those were his exact words. I wrote them down. No potential damage to structures. I thought that was very important. And then the thing that surprised me the most is we're only talking about a blast once a month. That's another thing I learned today. So I just can't imagine me personally complaining about that if I'm made aware if they're going to do it once a month. So those were just 2 things that stood out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this time the public portion is completely closed, and we'll bring the discussion back to the board. I'm not sure if we're awake, but well, then let me start then. I really liked it at the end, but I wanted to start. I'm mixed, Mr. Dix. I appreciate everything you've done on redoing the plan. I appreciate you giving me your explanation of affordable housing. I appreciate the experts that came in and shared a lot of information with us. But I'm not and can't really support a 6 unit per acre at this site with 3 entrances and egresses on the same street. 34 years I worked with FEMA. In 34 years, I rescued people out of neighborhoods that only had one way in and one way out. And a lot of them, over 34 years, were flooded in their cars. Some passed. So, and I blame that and have blamed it on the planning and the development of that city for allowing a subdivision to be put in with one way in and one way out. We need several means of egress. So with that being said, I can't support it at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Oh, were you done, by the way? Sorry. You were done?
Yes, you're on.
I'm going to go opposite of you for a second here. I'm going to say I'm for it. One of the statements that, a couple things. One, I wasn't here for the last application, so I'm going to take everything based off of what I've heard today. Lastly, I agree with the statement. A 19-year-old is not buying an acre of land. That's not happening. I think I'm the youngest on this board, and I see that community a lot. I think this gives us that ability to help some of those people get into houses and or even apartments. I know 20, 30-year-olds that are living with mom because they can't buy the 1 acre lot here in Citrus for $300,000. They just can't. Not to mention how close we are to Lecanto here, with a lot of my age working for the schools or working for somewhere that's easy accessible off of here. As in for the mine, I get it. I personally live near a loud noise area that when I bought my house, I wasn't aware. It's annoying, and I have to deal with it, unfortunately. I don't know if it's louder than the mine, but it's more consistent. I live near the airport and the racetrack in Inverness, so every day, all day, I hear planes and or race cars going. I have to accept that, though, because I bought the house there. Again, I think that has great potential. I'm not completely happy about the exits and entrances, like Chair just mentioned, but I still think I'm for it. That's just me.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Scherer.
I guess it's my turn. I've been doing this on this board now for 6 months, and this is the most difficult situation we found ourselves in. Compatibility. I went searching for a definition. I actually talked to some staff asking what compatibility really is. How do I define it? And I think we came to the conclusion is it is actually a judgment call. I like this development. I've lived in a development like this in Southeast Florida. They work. It's not that they don't work without problems, but they work. And they provide opportunities for younger people and older people to get into the housing market. What I struggle with in this particular case is, look, the mine is an operation. They're permitted under law. They have an obligation to do what they do and do it right. The fact that they're not comfortable with the fact that housing would move in and of itself, I don't think is an acceptable reason not to do this. Traffic, however, is a very real reason. And what I'm sensing and what's happening here is the infrastructure of this county needs to grow and needs to mature and needs to develop. We talked about it in a previous case where that road won't support, a particular type of development. That's not what this board, in my mind, should be basing on. We should be basing it on the facts in front of us today. The county has an obligation to do its job in terms of infrastructure to see that the roads, the traffic lights, the traffic studies are done, they're done properly, and then the proper measures are taken. So I am going to support this. I will tell you that I've been down to West B Street. I really respect what those folks have. It's a great place to go. I also looked at what their zoning is right now. They live in a wonderful pocket. I believe the increase in the buffer, I would make a suggestion, and for consideration, I don't know if we can do it, that buffer between King B Street go to a type D buffer and go with a 6-foot wall to give line of sight protection and to go to further noise attenuation as well. I don't know, Joe, if we can add something at this point, but that would be my suggestion. And that's where I stand with it. Not an easy decision by any means. And I think that the mission given by the commissioners and by common sense is the county's growing. We need affordable housing. We need places for people to come who are doing the work in the county to live. And it isn't always convenient when it's in my backyard. I get that. But I think this it appears to be a well thought out program. I'll support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Shara.
Chairman?
Commissioner Royce.
I'm going to support this because I think it's a great project. I think it's well thought out. And I also think that the applicant has shown that he's flexible enough to meet with the residents and other parties concerned around the area. I also think that if the mine was that concerned about the acreage around them, they would have bought it in 1965 when it was about 1/100th of what it is now. Back then, they weren't concerned with 3 or 4 farmers that surrounded the place. Now they're going to have thousands of people and more complaints. I'm sure they'll adjust. They've been around a long time, and I'm sure they'll continue to create a product that's used in the building industry. But I'm going to support this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Royce. Commissioner Worthington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Shara, I want to piggyback on what you've said a little bit, and I want to speak to the mining industry first. I think that the hesitation amongst the members of this board to come out with our opinions or decision after hearing the testimony and evidence presented, there was hesitation because it is a difficult decision. There's nothing that I want to do that impacts mining or your industry. You were there first, and you play an important role in our community. That being said, I think that I do a plus and minuses when I think about these development projects. And when I look at this, I think that this location, while it's not ideal for your industry, I think it's a great place for residential properties to go close to the school. They've put almost a football field in between the school and buffer in between the school and this development. However, there was a lot of talk about more cars in the school line and things like that. I live in Homosassa, in Old Homosassa Elementary. I can't tell you how excited my friends are when they are able to finally bring their kids to school on their golf carts, and how happy they are to live within proximity of the school. I think that this presents an excellent opportunity for those same families, and that they could have maybe that ability to walk their kids to school, golf cart their kids to school, or however we grow. There's a 10-year expiration on this PUD. There's always a lot of talk about infrastructure as it is today, but the fact of the matter is we're planning for the future. There's developments in our community like Citrus Springs that were planned in 1969, and they're still not built out. And we continue to make improvements and grow and improve our infrastructure as we go. And someone said that they thought that this is what was needed on Cardinal. I totally disagree with that. I think that this is the location where it is in the PSA. That's the thing. We have a mining operation in the PSA, and so we have to figure out, can those two things coexist? And I think that Mr. Dix has done a very good job. He's been responsive, and he's said he would be continually to be responsive to your industry and also the neighbors around him. So for those reasons, I will be also supporting this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Worthington. Commissioner Bramlett.
Mr. Chair, so I've struggled with this application just like the rest of you. Everybody has. I'm very vocal about the things in the way that I feel about projects and applications in front of us. I never struggled with the less than 6 units per acre here because by right with the PUD they were allowed. They're under that. They're at 5.7. While I do respect your comment regarding the access and and the FEMA talk with the flooding and stuff, I mean this property is, if it floods at this property, we've got a lot of issues. So I feel like, any emergencies that may happen, I mean, tornadoes, obviously, those are unannounced emergencies. Hurricanes, we get plenty of time to evacuate. The other emergency here obviously would be fire. Fire typically happens, it runs really quickly. but people tend to know and have a little bit of warning, unlike tornadoes. For me, the biggest was the mine. So I sat here and I allowed the mine people to talk and present me with some data that may change my mind, and at the end of the day, they didn't. So the only thing that I can do is I can go by the data that we currently have, and the data that we have is there's a very large trailer park across the street from the mine. I don't see any of those people here saying that their mobile homes have been falling apart for the last 60 years. I know that some of those mobile homes have probably been there since the mine's been there. There's a county government building that we're sitting in. I don't see anybody talking about the shake or the rattle that it deals with. We have a school board representative for a school, an entire school complex. And I just did rough measurements with my pen because I don't have the ability with all of the surveys. All of this development that is happening has already been around the mine. And there's nobody here presenting any data saying, my house fell down, or they blasted one time a month for 2 years straight, and now I have this big half-inch crack. So with that, the only thing I can do is take the data that I can process and garner from the information and the experts and the testimony. I think it's a great plan. I think Mr. Dix has done over and above what is required of him, what the concerns were last time, and for that reason, I'd be in support.
Thank you, Commissioner Bramlett. Anyone else? Commissioner Facemeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One good thing about being the last one to speak, most of everything that I had on my mind has already been said. So it'd be difficult for me to articulate any of the reasons that have not already been articulated, but I do plan to support this project or this application. I would like to encourage both the mining community and the developer to find some common ground, because we have two responsible business entities here, and I think there's room for common ground, whether that's an improved communication between the mining industry and a developer. I don't know how that works, because I don't know either, but I think you can do that. And predominantly, my reason for supporting this application is what Commissioner Gilbert mentioned early on, is that it's going to provide housing for younger people. The people who move into this community are not necessarily evil people who come from somewhere else. There are children and grandchildren. There are people who come to work here, to work in the healthcare industry, to work in the school district, and others. So having said all that, I do plan to support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Facemeyer.
Mr. Chair, I think we have an idea where we're going, so I'd like to work out these conditions a little bit with the board. There was a suggestion down there by Commissioner Shera that he wanted to change a buffer on the King B side to a type D with a wall. I'm not sure if that's supported by this board. It's not something I would support, but it's up to more than just myself.
Well, the developer did indicate they would put a 30-foot buffer there.
Yes, that's already on the plan.
Yeah.
So,
Which is more than required.
I agree. I don't think you need a wall, not up to 30 feet.
okay. All right. The condition about mining, is there something we can write in regarding notice?
We're on top of it. Go ahead.
I have something prepared. The condition that I have is the developer / applicant shall conspicuously disclose on the face of the plat, in the deed restrictions, and in all contracts and deeds that the site lies within 1/2 mile of an active mine, and that there may be noise and periodic ground vibrations that may occur as a result of blasting and other mining-related activities.
Okay.
And can I speak on that topic real quick? What brought my attention, I know when I'm a real estate agent, real estate agent for 22 years in Citrus County, a lot of closings, seen a lot of deeds. When you live in a special flood hazard area, your deed has to say that you live in a special flood hazard area. It's very conspicuous. agents, we let people know that. Obviously, a good agent will let their customers know well before they're sitting down to sign a deed to transfer the property. But if something in some language and some wording was added like that to the deed, I would confirm that it is very conspicuous and obvious. Or at least it should be to the person that is going to at least read the deed that they're signing to their property. They may not read the mountains and reams of mortgage paperwork.
Yes, and just to clarify, the condition does say that it shall be conspicuously disclosed. So hopefully that addresses your concern, Commissioner Brambler.
And regarding interchangeability, we talked about maybe.
Yes, so that was another thing I had prepared. So for condition 1, we would modify that, basically the last sentence of condition 1, to say the number of residential units of each type, and then parentheses, SFD, SFA, and MFA, may be adjusted by up to 10%, but cannot exceed the total count of 1,000 units. So that it speaks just to the number, can be modified by 10%.
Joe, follow-up question. Does that also, can you concur with what the applicant said, excuse me, that the type of housing cannot be relocated on the site plan? That if there is an adjustment to the number of units, they have to be in the same location where they're shown on the site plan?
Well, that's why we had clarified that it was only the number of units may be adjusted by 10%, so that the area depicted would remain the same.
Great, thank you.
And then also to clarify, it was something brought up, I added a condition for the 10-year time frame for the expiration of the PUD as requested by the applicant. I believe Commissioner Shara had mentioned a condition for sidewalks on both sides of the street and street lighting. Is that something the Commission would like to add? I mean, the sidewalks is a requirement of the Comprehensive Plan Land Development Code, but there's no hurt putting it in there.
The applicant did offer that in their presentation.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and Joe, when I went looking to the LDC, I couldn't see where it was defined where it was sidewalks on both sides of the street versus one, which in some developments they do that.
Hidden in the comp plan.
Hidden in the comp plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
And street lighting?
Street lighting is not, but the applicant did offer that. So I think the condition would be as pro-offered by the applicant, there should be sidewalks on both sides of the roadways and street lighting.
Agreed.
I'm in support of that.
Okay. All right, for the purposes of a motion.
I'm sorry,
Madam
Commissioner.
Attorney.
I wasn't giving my full attention to the first condition. May I ask Joe to tell
Yes,
us what
please.
that condition was again?
The language
Yeah.
on the line.
About the deed or the,
Yeah. The condition is the developer/applicant shall conspicuously disclose on the face of the plat, in the deed restrictions, and in all contracts and deeds that the site lies within 1/2 mile of an active mine, and that there may be noise and periodic ground vibrations that may occur as a result of blasting and other mining-related activities.
I'm not sure about the language on the deed. I understand Commissioner Bramlett's discussion about the flood hazard, but that's a statutory requirement. So that's the only one that I don't know whether the applicant, I don't know if the applicant can do that. Certainly deed restrictions, certainly plat, face of the plat. I just don't know about a deed. And I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
Does that mean you don't think we can require that?
Correct.
We can require it on the plat.
The plat,
Plat,
the
but not
deed
the deed.
restrictions, that just the deed is my concern. I'm not saying definitively that you can't, but I'm just not sure.
Are you talking about by like a state regulation?
I know there's no state regulation that
Like,
would
would the state would
require it.
regulate that we're not allowed to put it on there? Like, what would
That would
govern
be-
that
That would be more of a title issue.
title? So
I don't-
subject to title permissibility or something like that.
But who would make that determination?
But that's more legislation, right?
Title, I mean, I guess the
Statutory.
county would have to, or the applicant would have to get with title. I mean, I can think of 10 title people right off the top of my head that we could call that work at the title plants. They're all attorneys too.
And they're gonna give you free advice
But we have.
They
we
would
have
give it to
our
me,
attorney.
yes.
that we can all rely. I'm just, I think that if it's on the plat, if it's on the in deed restrictions, I don't know why you need to take that next step about a deed, because any title search is going to uncover the deed restrictions, and the title search is going to uncover what's on the face of the plat. So that added layer of the deed is something I'm not sure about, and I don't know why you would feel that it's necessary.
Okay, so I would agree with that just because based off of what you just said, special flood hazard areas are obviously not on the plat, and they're also not in deed restrictions.
Correct.
So as a proper business procedure, but potential buyers, prospective buyers, they're buying into a deed restricted area, you give them the deed restrictions prior to them making an offer. That's proper business. So I guess I would be okay with that particular
know.
portion being struck.
I don't know if y'all want to ask the developer if he is okay with that. He might be. I don't know.
With the deed restrictions and in
The deed.
oh,
If you put it on the deed, would that suggest to resale sellers that they have to do that?
Be in
Or-
perpetuity.
Yeah, I don't know how you would require that going forward.
Yeah.
Quite
But in
honestly.
HOA, you could require it for the deed restrictions, that it be every sale, have that in resale. But like, if you did it on the deed, that would be everybody that has a deed within a half mile of a mine would have to have that on there, wouldn't they? Or it would be inconsistent.
I think that this is just applicable to the properties within this subdivision.
Okay.
So I don't know about what those other ones would say. But I think you're covered. From what I've heard from you, your concerns, I think that having it on the deed restrictions and the face of the plat, you're covered.
well, if the attorney says that, then I'm fine with that. I take her advice and I say we go with it. And for the purposes of a motion, the Planning and Development Commission finds application number CPA/AA/PUD-2023-00011 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with conditions as we went over and as in our staff report of the application to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
I'll second.
So we got a first by Commissioner Worthington, a second by Commissioner Gilbert. Any other discussions from the board? I would just like to add one thing. Mr. Dix, I love this project. I love everything about it. I love the idea that the apartment complex is in there. The only thing I do hate, and maybe you can work on, I don't know if there's even possible to get another means of egress in there or spread them apart so they're not, 220 yards apart from each other. Do something. If you do that, I'm all in. It's the only thing that kept me from coming in. It's just, I feel sick about it, and probably sick for a week, but it's torn. Any other discussions?
Mr. Chair, respecting my colleague's discussion on the buffer, I would just like to encourage the developer to continue to reach out to the folks that live on King B and to maximize anything you can do on that buffer that helps them and keeps their quality of life as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries 6-1. All right. Any,
Your next meeting, you have two applications. One of them is the State Route 44 Interchange Management Area, the Land Development Code Standards. You've seen a workshop, so this will be actually considering them. In September, 5 applications on the first meeting in September, heavy ones, big PUDs. Try to be here. Second meeting in September, 3. So we are very, very busy. Things have not slowed down at all.
and I'd just like to encourage
not.
everyone here to go visit August the 7th. Our own Eric Landon is going to be representing with the chamber and going to be bringing us a lot of great information, I'm sure. And thank you for your dedication.
And it's
to
his
the
birthday, but
public.
he sat through this. So.
Today's your
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Rob.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say I highly recommend those workshops because they're informative and also very, very nice to get input from the public on our future.
Thank you. Any further business? Anything for you, Mr. Landon, birthday boy?
No, sir.
All right.
Move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Granted. See you in 2 weeks.